Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's a regular meeting of the Lammersville Unified School District Board of Education. It's September 2nd. Call this meeting to order at 7 o'clock. If you would, at this time, please silence any cell phones. Also be advised that this meeting is being recorded, and please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Roll call.
Matthew Balzerini.
Here.
Colin Clements.
Here.
Sharon Lampel.
Here.
Shane Nielsen.
Here.
David Pombo.
Here.
Samantha D. Tiberis.
Here.
Approval and/or corrections of the agenda.
There are none. Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Receiving a public comment. If there's anything that's not listed as an agenda item that someone would like to speak to, please turn in a speaker card. At this time, I have one. Shelley Morris. Oh, I have two. Right over there.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shelley. I'm a teacher of 6 years at your district. I'm here today because I've come to your meetings and I listen, and I'm a little concerned because I feel like the picture that you're being presented with is a very polished and protected view of what's happening in the district. I appreciate your comments at the last meeting that people should come and contact you, but I hope that you realize that teachers in this district are very, very hesitant to talk to you. Number one, they don't know who you are. They don't see you enough. Also, people who are not tenured are afraid to speak their mind. And some teachers who have been here for years and years are also afraid to share their real feelings about what's happening in the district. I really believe that it's your responsibility as board members here in this district to, from time to time, get into the trenches and be there in your schools, asking us questions, asking the staff questions, seeing what it's like. Not just at special events, not just when the superintendent is leading you around, but hang out with us. Come, ask questions. Ask those first and second year teachers how the heck they're handling BITSA. Ask those 10, 15, 20-year teachers if they feel like they're being honored their longevity. Ask the 7th and 8th grade teachers who are rolling out Canvas and one-to-one Chromebooks and RCD. Ask them how that's going. Talk to the elementary school teachers about what it was like to take their kids to the library for the first time this week, or to have 90 students there playing a musical instrument all at once. We've got some really amazing things happening in our schools on a day-to-day basis, but we also have some very real struggles that until you step out of this little bubble and come to us and talk to us about them, you're never going to understand what's going on. You have to be there, building that sense of community with your staff, building those relationships and that trust so that they will feel comfortable enough with you to be honest with you. So I challenge you. No, I'm pleading with you. Please come to our schools without chaperones. Just come talk to us because we want to be heard, but there's a lot of distrust. And until you're here with us, you won't see what's really happening in Lammersville schools because there's some really great stuff. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. I agree, and I've made an effort to visit campuses. I will admit, last year I had a very difficult time. I've taken on a lot of other responsibilities, and last year I just didn't have time, and I regret that. So I will make an effort, and I will get out and visit the campuses. I know last year, at the end of the year, I had the opportunity to visit all the math classes at the high school, And I'll make sure that I get to the campuses, and would encourage the remainder of the board to do as well.
And I have been at the sites without district administration. That's all I'm going to say.
Next speaker, Danelle Faubert.
I did have one. I wanted to thank you for, having the courage to stand up and speak. And I personally hear what you have to say. So thank you very much.
Danelle.
Good evening, Governing Board and Superintendent. I'm Danelle Faubert. I'm here as a Mountain House High School parent tonight. And the last time I spoke in public comment was actually at a Tracy Unified School District meeting. And a gaggle of us went to petition that board to release us and give us freedom to unify and create a high school. And we've done that. And this, a week or so ago, I was able to attend the back to school night as a parent at Mountain House High School. And I was able to do so incognito a little bit because there are so many new teachers there that I hadn't met yet. And so there really wasn't introductions, and it was nice to go as just a regular parent that the teachers didn't recognize yet. And so I feel like I got a very honest view of how things were presented. And I'll tell you, Mr. Faubert can attest to the fact that I am probably the most critical of education in our district on a daily basis. And I left the back to school night so energized and excited. And I felt that the vision that was set forth years ago, and the work that was done by so many community members and the board to get us to where we are, it was exciting, and I just really felt that we came full circle. And I know the board has a great deal of work to do. We're never going to be perfect, and there's lots of room for improvement. We have, I know, teacher negotiations going on right now. We have limited teaching. We're still lacking in teachers. My own son is in a class with a long-term sub, so I know that there are hurdles, but I just wanted to take a step back for a minute and think about the success that we really truly have had, and to say thank you, and also to recognize that the community members have played a really large role in getting us to the place that we are. And I personally would like to continue to really have a strong collaborative working agreement and arrangements with the board and our site administrators and our teachers, that we can really continue to make Lammersville just an outstanding place to live, to work, to learn. So thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Douglas.
Hi, this is my first meeting with you guys. I'm here tonight to talk about the grading scale at the Mountain House High School. It came to my attention that it was changed recently from the Lammersville standards, which are roughly 90 to 100 for an A, 80 to 90 or 80 to 89 for a B. I have a paper showing that Mountain House High School is making 75 to 90 a B. And I'm uncomfortable with that change. The change waters down the lower grades so that 50%, 51% is a passing grade. Nowhere I've been to school, nowhere I've heard of anyone going to school, could do 51% and pass a class. I'm thinking that is not a good idea. I'm proposing that you move it back to the Lammersville grading scale of 90 to 100, 10 percentage points down, 60 to 100 would be a passing grade. So that's my first item of business. My second item of business, I'm here to talk about the Mountain House High School and the online curriculum that is championed by the high school. I know this is something that I walked into that is years in the making, and I'm only beginning now to unravel it. Apparently, the package purchased by Mountain House High School is by Blended School Network Sibling Group. I'm wondering, what are the terms of our agreement with this company to provide our curriculum? Are we locked in to this curriculum? Or do we have an option of using this curriculum partly and going to other options to make it a more balanced curriculum with multiple sources of, I guess you'd call that a lecture, textbook, in addition to online learning? I feel, and I don't know how a lot of the community members feel, but I feel that sticking with one medium is somewhat dogmatic. It's experimental. It's not proven. From what I can tell, there aren't many many high schools running an all online program. I don't feel this is a charter school. This is a public school, and I don't think we need to experiment on kids in a public school. Time's up.
As far as your first item, I believe Superintendent has some more information in his report about that. So if you want to wait for the superintendent's report, he's going to actually be talking about that.
Okay.
And your second item, I encourage you to go meet with Mr. Faubert. He's
Your principal.
the principal at the high school.
Okay.
And I'm sure he can answer any questions that you have about everything you just mentioned.
Okay.
Okay?
I can do that. Can I have one other item of business?
Your
Or my
time
time's
is
up? Okay, next time. Thank you.
Our next item is presentations. Item A is employee recognition. Staff report.
So I'm excited for the opportunity to honor some people in our district, our teachers, who have done some excellent work over the last 2 summers and throughout the last school year. So kind of in the theme of what's been going on, just a quick timeline. 2012, the standards that everybody was accustomed to were changed to the Common Core. Local control became the buzzword in education. Local control accountability plans became the work that districts did to explain how they were going to adjust to a new set of expectations. And slowly but surely, including this week, all of the things that people, teachers, community members, parents were accustomed to, tests, assessments, the way things are talked about, slowly but surely have disappeared. In the midst of all this, the term local control became the focus of what people were to do. So though there's a new state-mandated standards that tied to national standards, though there is a local control funding formula that came from the state, though there is a local control accountability plan with oversight from the county and the state, what didn't come down the pike was, here's the tools in order to meet the new standards. So each district's had to find a way, a journey, a path to how they're going to adjust to a new era of 21st century education, 21st century classrooms, technology-based assessments, and the new standards where the words rigor and higher order thinking skills are interwoven. The people out here in the audience tonight that are going to get a certificate are the people who stepped up for the children in our district, who said, we're willing to take on a task, we're willing to take a look, we're willing to design units of study that are built around these precepts, and we're willing to put it forward to our peers and work through a process. It's not been always smooth, as there's been frustrations, but the people out here in the audience have stepped up and led, have stepped up and said, we believe in what we're doing, we believe in ourselves and our peers, and we believe in our children. And so tonight we're going to be honoring them with certificates. It's going to go like this. I'm going to read off the names. We're going to have folks come down here. We're going to give you a certificate. Noelle has sworn me that we're going to take a picture, so everybody's got to stay. And then we'll have a short break with some cookies, and then we'll get back to the business of the board. So... So we're going to, can everyone hear this? So we're going to call everybody up. You're going to kind of do a loop. And then I think we can get everybody to fit in right here. So our first recipient, and a big thank you to Amy Swankhausen. Brandon Smith. Lisa Scafidi. Nancy Matthews. Thank you. Nicole Wentz. Nicole Wright. Rebecca Mabus. Sorry. So we're going to run out of room. Renee Nunn. We're going to take a pause. Becky, right here. Shelley Morris. Tennille Haro. Jill Waters. Teresa Peer. Emily Hoptree. And last but not least, soon to be enjoying a little papoose, Nicole Kangas. Now we have a number of other folks who have certificates, but these are the folks that RSVP'd. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through and read the other names. If you're here, we have a certificate for you. If not, so we're going to hold till the end, have one last applause, and then we're going to take a picture. Okay, so it's getting long. Here we go. Lisa DiMartino, Megan Kiernan, please here. Catherine Kuzma, Corey Bishop, Deborah Byan, Deborah Ritchie, Jennifer Reynoso, Margaret Ball, Sasha Foster, Barbara Burns, Baby Crying, Brittany Gates, Cara Hallam, right on. Dana Weld, Elaine Volmer, Francis Chamberlain, Caitlin Charland, Katrina Bornkamp, Michelle Montero, Samantha Grant, and Teresa Bowden-Miller. Absolutely, Teresa Bowden-Miller, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so we're going to do a team photo with the board. We got a wide lens? Here we go. You guys, why don't you come back over here? Go back. Shortest people in the front. Megan.
Me in the back.
Yeah, you stand next to me.
You guys cannot make it go front.
No, you're perfect.
We're always in the back.
All right, so if you're under 5'5", you're going to move to the front. If you're around 5 foot, Becky, you can stand in the front. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. So we have some cookies. You might have to split them in half. And Alvina ate one already. So take a couple of minutes to.
Combo to the principal's office.
Oh, yeah, right. Which Mr. Pombo?
That's a very good point. That is definitely not the first time that's been said in this district.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we need to come back to order. We got a long agenda. All right, next is items for consent items for consideration. There are several. Approval of the governing board meeting minutes from August 19th. For the board, there's an updated copy. There was a couple typos that have been corrected. There's a copy here, and the updated copy will be available on the website. Approval of the 2015-16 hires. Approval of the 2015-16 K-8 volleyball coaches. Approval of 2015-16 Mountain House high school coaches. Acceptance of 4 resignations. And acceptance of a couple donations. $60 from AT&T Employee Giving Campaign. Narita Samafuin towards Mrs. Twisselman's class. Wickland School Science Olympiad. $150 from Queen Lee Foe and Mark Smith. $150 from Saravana and Don and Sabayath Saravanan.
Sabitha.
That's what I meant. And $150 from MRSO Science Boosters, Inc. You can approve these, or if anyone has anything like to discuss.
I move we approve the consent items.
I have a comment before we vote, please. I'd like to recognize the new hires. Glenn Leo Gapusan, social studies teacher. Galen Novello, math and computer science teacher. Karen Capel, special education teacher. Christy Whipke, self-contained classroom teacher at the elementary level. And Fabiola Guajardo, food service lead. So I'd like to welcome them to our Lammersville family.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you for that. Are you making a second on that?
Yes, I am.
Can I just want to add one little comment, and I don't believe she's here. I didn't see her in the audience, but I've had the pleasure for almost 12 years that I've had students, my children in this district, to be associated with Mrs. Robertson. All 3 of my children have had her as a music teacher. When I informed my oldest, who is now a sophomore in college, that she was leaving, she almost cried. This district, back when he was even an elementary district and during some of the hardest times, always fought to champion the music program and the arts programs in our schools, recognize the importance of that. And personally speaking, I've always seen Mrs. Robertson as one big part of that. She was a champion for the program in this district when we were looking at cuts, and she was at those meetings talking to us about why this program needed to stay. It's a loss for this district. I'm sad to see her go. I'm glad she's getting a position that she wants to do the goals for herself, that she's made a personal decision for herself to do something she loves. And I applaud her for that, but I am personally going to miss her greatly.
First and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. District administrative reports. Item A is the superintendent's report.
I'm going to ask Heather Sherburne, our Director of Instruction and in Technology Intervention and Assessment, and a lot of other things, come up and speak to our CASP results. The state keeps rolling out, it's changing every day kind of format. So Heather's going to give us an update on the first CASP results that we're going to be able to talk about.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to be here and share the upcoming release of the results with you and some information about it. So a little bit on the timeline and the process. We've had the preliminary CASP results from the state testing for a few weeks now, maybe the last month. We've had them rolling in, and they're called preliminary specifically because they're adjusting and updating all of the time. And currently, as of right now, that's all we have are preliminary results. We are cautioned against sharing those results publicly. We're finally at a time where we feel safe enough to share those results, but I have to state, that very solidly that these are still preliminary results until we get our official results coming up very shortly. So we've been looking at them and studying the changes and looking at what's going on, and in a short summary, I can tell you that we're very pleased, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute. The next step will be tomorrow that they'll release the embargoed final scores to the district office staff to look at. We'll be able to go in, review those results, look at them, and look for ourselves to see, do we see any errors, anything that looks glaringly wrong? And then we have until September 8th at 10 a.m. in the morning to notify the State Department if we see any errors that need to be corrected. Following that, on the 9th, then there will be an official public release at approximately 11 a.m. and Tom Torlakson will make a media blitz announcement about the whole thing, and the website will go live. So at that time, when the website goes live, there will be a search engine that's in there, very similar to what we've had through DataQuest in the past and been able to look at. So parents, teachers, whomever from the public can go onto that, and they can put in a district or a county or a school site and pull up the information about it. So what will they see? When they get their search in there, what they'll basically see is a tab at the top that'll show what percentage of students in a bar graph form have met the standards or fallen below the standards. The way the scores are presented or categorized is as standard not met, standard nearly met, standard met, or standard exceeded. Okay? Then they'll also have that in table format, as you can see there below, for each of the grade levels. The other thing that they'll put on there is looking at the claims, and a short way of saying a claim is that's the overall larger picture of what the state is saying that they really want students to know and be able to do using all of these standards. So the claims for English language arts are broken down into reading, writing, listening, and research and inquiry in that level, and that's what you see up there. There are also 3 claims for math, and the 3 claims for math are concepts and procedures, communicating reasoning, and the third one is problem solving, modeling, and data analysis. And so then they'll look at, so overall, how did your students achieve according to these claim levels? Those claim levels are only broken into 3 areas of nearly met, met, or below. They're not broken into the same 4 categories that the actual standards are for meeting are broken into, if that makes sense. So that will be available at the district level, at the school site level, or at the county level on that website. And then students will also parents will get student reports eventually that will have that same information for their specific child. That student information is not available on the website public. So basically, we want to celebrate Lammersville because the state, when they have done their field testing in the past, has looked at all of that data and determined what they expect the first release of the official results to be for the proficiency statewide. Now, nobody knows exactly what that is yet, not until 11 a.m. on the 9th. But what they expected for that to be is around 40% in English language arts and around 33% in math. And for Lammersville, I can share with you that we have exceeded those results. Every indicator is that we've exceeded it. And I left it blank so that we could leave a little bit of suspense up there for you. So to share with you that in English language arts, right now for every grade level, we hover right around 50%. So to come right out the gate and exceed that by over 10% on a test that we have never seen really and taken before on this kind of a scale is an amazing feat, and I think we have a lot to be proud of. In math, you can see up there that the state actually expected the math performance to be worse than the language arts performance, but here in Lammersville and in Mountain House, it actually is better. Depending upon the grade level, it's going anywhere between 51% and 65% standard met, so an amazing, amazing job that our staff and students have done out there in these areas. The claim results, when we look at that as well, it varies a little bit between the grade levels, but overall the strongest claim in language arts is writing and at 3rd, 7th, and 8th grade, and it's research and inquiry for 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. So we have two general categories, which interestingly enough to me are tied together somewhat. When you're doing research and inquiry, it's typically to do a writing project. So that'll be an interesting thing for us to look at. In math, the strongest claims are in the area of communicating reasoning for 3rd through 7th grade, which in my mind, I'm also seeing that correlation to writing. In the math, when they're communicating their reasoning, they're very often having to write and explain that reasoning out. And then in 8th grade, their strongest claim was problem solving, modeling, and data analysis. So then we look at what are the claim areas that we need for growth, and we had some consistency there. The weakest claim for us that we are going to need to look at as a growth area in English language arts is reading. And then in math, it's the overall weak area is the concepts and procedures area. So that'll be what we'll be looking at. So the state is rolling out their public website. They are also in the process of mailing out all of the individual student reports. They send them to the district, and then once we receive them, we will have 20 days to mail those home to parents. The reports, this is a sample of it. I apologize that it is a little blurry. I copied it from the web page, and it just didn't copy well. But the report is nice in that it's going to have the actual raw score and on the bands that you see there, and it'll show where that score falls within the band of standard met, nearly met, or exceeded below standard. So it'll show the actual score, and they'll know exactly how their child does. And they have a nice informational paragraph next to that. It'll also tell them how their child did in relation to the claims. And they'll have that available for English language arts and math. If they were in 5th grade and took science or 8th grade, then they'll have that additional data on there as well. So we want to make sure, though, that our parents understand the reports that are coming out, because this is an entirely new era of testing, and it's different. So this is an example of a resource that's available. The State Department has done a very nice job of providing resources that are in print and in video for parents. So we're looking at creating different opportunities for parents to become informed about what is going on. That would include print materials from the State Department, include posting videos out there, include having informational meetings that we could help walk through parents through some of this information over the next few weeks. And this last slide here is an example of a parent guide that was created between the State Department in coordination with the PTA organization. And these guides are a really nice guide. They're long. They're 49 pages long, but they're very informative to parents. They're printed by grade range, and within that, they're going to have subject by subject grade samples and question samples, what their child has to know matched and aligned exactly to the standard. So we'll give parents a lot of information about what it looks like on the test in order for their child to have this type of score and understanding, and what the expectations are around that. So in summary, we have a lot to be proud of here in Lammersville. I am very excited to be a part of this district, as you know, being new coming on. And there's a real testament out there of exciting news to come next week when it's official, to say, you know, kudos to our teachers and our staff and our board and all of the district office, our students, for the great work that's been done. Thank you.
That last booklet that you showed, that was the state and the PTA, is that available? Is the whole text of the pamphlet available on the website?
It's a web link, right, and so
Okay.
you can go in and read through that whole pamphlet.
Okay, great. And I do have another comment. There's one excuse, and one excuse only, for student achievement, and that's our teachers, and I'd like to thank our teachers.
I would add, parents are an important part of that too, but I agree wholeheartedly that the teachers are a major part of that. As a parent, I just want to say, it's not all my fault and it's not all my credit. We're a team here. But I wanted to add a couple of things that you know, especially with some of the conversations that we've been having tonight. The last year and a half has been very difficult in this district. We've opened 2 new schools, a high school and an elementary school, created an entirely new curriculum, which most of this staff got awarded for working on a part of that with the LCAP tonight. We've also got the RCD teams. Change is never easy. Changing to a new curriculum model at the high school is not easy. But I have told everyone who's asked me, you can't judge until we start to see results. We can't decide whether something is good or bad, whether something works or it doesn't, until we have something to measure it against. And I'm hopeful that folks can see, wait a minute, we have a goal and a plan and a vision in mind with all of the things that we're doing. And in the end, that goal and plan and vision was just illustrated. Achievement of our students when it comes to these measures. But I want to echo what Mrs. Faubert said earlier. We're not perfect, and we're not done. We're just beginning this. It's 15 months old for what has actually been put into play. And I'm hoping that we can get a collaboration between staff, including teachers, at district administration, and parents to recognize, wait a minute, this is not a finished house. We're still building this together, and let's look at what needs to be fixed and what can be changed, but let's not just demolish the building because it's been difficult. I'm hoping that as these results come out and come public, that most folks will start to see what the vision was behind all of this and help us try to fix this rather than trash it. Thank you.
And to echo your comments, I'm very involved with the California School Board Association. I sit on the board of directors, and we've had presentations from the state, and to have state representatives come up there and in essence tell us, well, we know you're already working towards this, but we're still kind of making up as we go. It's kind of hard to do business when the state's operating that way. So I commend everyone on the staff and all the hard work from our students, of course, and keep on trucking. Everyone's doing a good job, and we're doing the best that we can with the information and the process that we're getting from the state as they continue to make it up as we go. So excellent work by everyone.
If I could just inject one other statistic here. The California high school exit exam was put on pause, if not sunsetted out for real, this last week. But our high schools only measure that as a standard that everybody's accustomed to. And I just want to remind the community, 89% first-time passage rate for math, 92% first-time passage rate for ELA.
And if I remember reading correctly, one of the reasons they were getting rid of that test was because of the change to the new curriculums. The passage rates were around 50% or so in the last year. I don't remember the exact figure, but we far exceeded the statewide average in those areas as well. And like I say, it's all a part of a step in the process to building a better school district that's equipping our children for what's coming 5, 10 years down the road.
Yeah, the test was not testing what we were teaching.
Exactly.
And our kids still did well.
I would also remind my fellow board members and offer the public a bit of a cautionary tale. When I was on the reaccreditation committee for Cal State University Sacramento School of Business, they had been put on probation to lose their accreditation, and they'd been on probation for 3 of the 4 years that you have to respond. And the problem was that the old guard in the School of Business said, we are not going to change. We know what a college graduate needs, and we are not going to change what we are teaching or how we are teaching it. And the School of Business, and by the way, I was a senior and learned that I might graduate and have my diploma be not worth the paper that it was printed on. So this was near and dear to my heart. And as it turned out, the whole problem was that the School of Business did not modify what it was doing. And other school districts that have been doing what they've been doing for however many years that they've been doing it, they're not feeling the pain yet. But education is changing. We know that. And we chose to go ahead and adopt a newer methodology, blended learning, and there is pain involved with that. We didn't do it perfectly, but I don't think, that doing things the way that they've always been done, regardless of change in the environment, is the right answer, which is why the district made the decision that it did.
Thank you for the presentation. Appreciate it.
Our second, I'm going to have Mr. Faubert come up and speak to mastery-based grading policy and add some clarifying information. I think will kind of bring full circle the conversation that Mr. Nielsen was just speaking to.
I don't have a slick presentation this time. I'm just here to talk to you. The mastery-based learning paradigm at Mountain House High School is something that's been talked about since the very inception of our program at Mountain House High School, and it's been something that we've talked about from the very first presentations that were made to our community. We're following through with those promises to our community in making sure that the grades that students receive on their report card are a true reflection of their mastery of the standards, and solely the mastery of the standards. And in most high schools across the nation, grading scales are either determined classroom by classroom or department by department. A lot less they are determined in a school-wide way, and we believe that as we have developed this program, that rolling out the percentage-based system that we have this year as a school on a school-wide basis makes the conversation become transparent for all of students, parents, community, etc. So our aim in creating this mastery-based system and in bringing the percentages on a school-wide basis is to ensure that the conversation moves away from how much work a student turns in to whether the student has mastered the concepts or not. And in order to do that, we have been and are developing, continue to develop rubrics that correspond to the level of mastery that our students have. We are proud to say that while the numbers that we are trying to make our mastery-based system move into, while it's difficult to sometimes explain how to fit a round peg in a square hole, what we have done is we've ensured that mastery at each of those levels, A, B, C, D, and F, that the language that are in the rubrics match the amount of mastery that students are required to master at those levels. I want to also draw attention to the fact that one of the reasons that Mountain House High School was able to gain accreditation for WASC in its first year, which is typically unheard of for a first-year high school. Typically, we would still be working on accreditation and probably attain it by May of this year. Because we had seniors this year, we fast-tracked that WASC accreditation. We pulled a couple of strings with the Western Association of Schools and Colleges, got an early visit, and because of our mastery-based learning and grading system, that WASC accreditation committee was impressed with what we did and automatically gave us our candidacy accreditation. And we currently have our candidacy accreditation, and almost every one of our courses are A through G UC approved courses. That includes courses that are developed partially using our blended schools curriculum content that we purchased, and I want to clarify for the board that it is an important part of our mastery-based learning system, but it is not the only curriculum that is developed. As these teachers who are here will attest to, we are involved in a rigorous curriculum design process that the high school is also engaged in. We needed a jumping off point, and we purchased curriculum from a company that also, all of their curriculum that we have adopted is also UC A through G approved. Thanks to Mountain House High School making sure that we helped that organization gain A through G accreditation for all of their courses. So that said, while our grading scale may look non-traditional, it is something that we have been discussing, something that we have made school-wide this year, and each of the grade levels that are provided for students and teachers and our community correspond with a very rigorous rubric that backs up each of those grades that students receive in their classes. So that's all I have for you today.
Could you just briefly explain, oops, I'm not on. Could you just briefly explain why it looks so different? Why would a 51% still be passing, yet back in the Ice Age when I was in high school, that would be failing?
Right.
So what does that 51% really represent?
Right. So the
What's the difference? Just break it down for me, Barney style, because I need to know.
What was that?
I said, what's the difference between, because what I'm hearing is that they're different, that mastery based on rubric and 90, 80, 70, 60, 50 are different. And if I'm wrong, then just correct me.
So here's the difference. In the old system, a student would come to a teacher who has an F, and they would say, which pieces of paper do I need to complete to make my grade go up? Mm-hmm. In a mastery-based grading paradigm, a student would come into the teacher and say, can you please help me understand how I can gain better mastery of this concept to meet the standard that has been set forward so that I can meet this level of standard for that grade. And so we're turning the conversation away from turning stacks of paper in and making sure that students negotiate their grade at the end of the semester by saying, I have all these papers I can return in, and turning the conversation to let's look at the rubric and let's look and see how you can master the concept. We're not looking at a 50% amount of the work finished, and that's the main difference. If a student completed 50% of the work, who knows what that work is, right? As opposed to 90% of the grade is now based on mastery assessments. And if they mastered 50% of those mastery assessments, we're talking that kid knows more than a kid who just turned in 15 extra worksheets to get the extra credit. I don't know if I...
Actually, you did, because I actually had a question for really the audience, but if I can. Because I'm remembering back to my high school days, and be intellectually honest, right? When you were in high school, raise your hand if any of your teachers graded on the curve. Raise your hand if any of your teachers gave you the ability to do extra credit. And what I'm hearing is that, and trust me, I think and the last question. Raise your hand if any of your teachers allowed you to drop your lowest exam score. Okay? Now, granted, I admit I got through high school on a wing and a prayer. But what I'm hearing is, look, the ability to write a 4-page essay on knitting with kitten fur or whatever, those days are gone. Just make work assignments to get somebody that you have to show mastery of the concepts that are involved in the class.
Right.
As opposed to, well, you know what, the tests were all too hard, so I'm going to grade on the curve, or I'm going to let you drop the lowest test, or whatever. Look, you have to master a significant portion.
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, and an important part of our mastery-based learning and grading system, and again, all of this is available. Hopefully you had some opportunity to take a look at our mastery-based learning guide that we have posted on our website, and that's been posted on our website for some time. Part of it is the redo retake policy, in that instead of providing extra credit for a student, if a student really wants to have that conversation with a teacher about how do I master this, the student would go back to maybe an assignment that they did not gain, that mastery on. They would have to, and each of our departments has developed their own error analysis, and the kid would go through, for example, an essay and say, okay, I have to complete this paper to say, where are the errors that I made? How can I make it better? And then they have to do it again. in order to demonstrate that not only did I do it once and not do all that well, and then it celebrates failure as a part of the process, be able to revise and understand what I did wrong, and then go back and demonstrate mastery again. It's a different concept. It's a different mindset. And I'll be the first to tell you, we have 7 kids, 7 kids at home. 5 of them are in the system right now.
So far.
Nell's gonna hurt you.
Tomorrow's a new day.
But we've had kids who we've gone to the teacher and said, my kid is really struggling in math. She is getting a C at the progress report time. What can we do to make sure that she gets a better grade? And lo and behold, the teacher offers, very generously, here's some extra credit to do, and now my child has an A. And we've probably the only parent that has gone back to the teacher and said, no. Give her a C again. We want her to master the concepts that she didn't know, because now what we did is, just take, for example, Pythagorean theorem, because I don't know math. That's the only thing I remember from high school. Pythagorean theorem. Say she didn't master that at a grade, she had a C on it, and she wants to get a B or an A, right? If you just give my daughter some random extra credit, and then she gets a better grade and moves on, what happens when she needs to apply Pythagorean theorem to another concept later? She never mastered that at a higher level. So it's a lot more valuable for a student to have a conversation with a teacher and the teacher say, well, here's the things you kind of did wrong. Why don't you reflect on that? Here's our error analysis sheet. Why don't you sit down and then we'll talk together and then retry that concept and see if you can master it at a higher level. As a parent, I'm more satisfied with that. And then I'm able to say, my student has mastered that and we can now move on. And I'm not going to worry when my kid gets into high school and is in a higher math class and needs to understand that at a very deep level in order to apply it to other concepts.
Ben, can you talk a little bit about the development of the rubric and the process and collaboration the teachers are doing and how that would apply? So you explained that, but the rubric piece is also crucial.
Right, the rubric piece is crucial. So one of the things that we did this year in our district at the high school level is the teachers have collaboration on a daily basis. Instead of having early release Fridays, they have 1 period a day with their department. And what we are focusing on with professional development this year is really fleshing out the rubrics department by department and ensuring that departments are working on a common language per department, per subject, to be able to nail down what it means. And what these rubrics will be is kid-friendly language. When we come to this unit of study, I can know what, and it's a 4-level rubric. It's you've mastered it and you have applied it beyond, is the 4. A 3 is you've done what you were supposed to do. A 2 is you've mastered some of the topics, but you still have some problems with others. And we don't have a 1. We call it a not yet. Because a 1 or a 0 is kind of like, oh, you fail. And we'd rather say, well, no, you just don't have it yet. And then you have the opportunity to move forward and master it at a different time. So those are the 4 levels, and we're translating that into chemistry speak and math speak and biology speak and English speak. And our departments and our department chairs are leading that charge to get those rubrics developed, fleshed out, so that students and parents can see. And when they turn in an English essay and they haven't mastered it all the way, the teacher has something to talk about with the kid. Well, see, this is the rubric, and here's what was expected. Let's look for you to master it in a different way.
You like to make a couple comments, Samantha?
Yes. So with the mastery assessment, it's not really based on, students just want to turn in assignments just to turn it in, just to have it done. But now students are actually taking the time and actually trying to figure it out and actually learning the concepts so they do understand it and it reflects their grade.
Thank you.
And
You
that's
didn't
pretty
have to say
powerful,
all that.
right?
Just put Samantha up
Why
there.
didn't you talk first? Yeah. Well, and that's really what it is. Kids are, It's the whole concept of, man, it's such a drag to not do the work the first time. I might as well just do it right now instead of wait till later, right? Instead of just turning it in to get the points, they're really looking at it to master the concept, because they know if they don't, their parents are going to make them go back and master it. And because of the schedule that we have with the collaboration, the success period, and the academic study skills now, if kids aren't mastering those and they have a D or an F, we're giving them the support they need. They don't get the hour-long lunch. They don't get the flex period if they're truly struggling. And we're not presenting that to our students as a punishment. And we've talked long and hard about it with our staff, and to say success period, which is our 30-minute daily opportunity to intervene with students, is to never be used as a punishment. If a student is struggling, the language should say, and they laugh about it, but we should be saying to kids, you're not mastering this concept. I am going to support you. Come to success. That's why we call it success, right? Academic study skills. If you're really struggling, that program is being developed to ensure that as soon as we have the feedback from grades at the quarter time, if we have students severely struggling, kids will be in that class and they will meet one-on-one with a teacher every 2 weeks, and they will create a 2-week goal and plan for their academic progress that will be shared with the parent, with all of the kids' 6 teachers, and with the counselor. And then every 2 weeks, the kid has to sit down again with the academic study skills teacher and say...
Gets to sit down.
Yes, gets to. You're right. Gets to sit down and say, here's the successes I had over the last 2 weeks. Now here's my new plan for the next 2 weeks, so that hopefully I can go back out for an hour-long lunch, so that hopefully I can find success. And then we show kids by our actions, not just our actions, and by what we're doing in our classroom, but how we grade them, that we care. So many kids have been used to just saying, well, I can just get out of this by not doing the work. Well, not at Mountain House High School anymore. You don't do the work, and we're going to support you.
You get the opportunity to do it.
We get the
again.
opportunity to support you, and the punishment for not doing the work is doing the work. There's my former vice principal has the parable of the lawnmower. If you tell your son to go out and mow the lawn, and he doesn't do it, is the punishment for him not to mow the lawn? Okay, go to your room, don't mow the lawn. No. The punishment is go mow the lawn and then go to your room. So it's kind of the principle of, if you don't do the work the first time, okay, but we're going to show you that it's important enough for us, for you, and for us to help you, that we're going to put these things in place.
Mr. Faubert, thank you very much for the presentation. It helped me a lot. And I understand that students learn differently. I understand exactly what you and your staff are trying to accomplish, and I appreciate it. The concern that I have are the parents. I don't think that, and I don't know if it's a district responsibility or if it's on the high school or where the parents are not understanding all of this. I mean, it's clear to me the students understand, but they're not able.
I didn't understand when I fully until tonight.
So I don't think they're articulating to their parents, because it's easier just not to, because they're high school students, which I understand that too.
And soon it will be in full force for some of them.
So I think we need to do a better job as far as educating the parents how the shift in education and what we're trying to accomplish at the high school, because it's great stuff. I feel like we need to do better outreach and get them on board. So
if I could just add on to that, we serve 2 functions as far as I see it here. One, to look out for and be champions and stewards for this district, but we're also elected representatives for the parents of this district. And that would be it. If we had as someone who, I had no idea, my daughter's in the high school taking math, I had no idea this change was coming, and I had the similar action going, this looks insane. If I had had an opportunity just to sit down for 30 minutes with you at a presentation, or to have had an email sent to me, or some opportunity for a further discussion on this, it was very easy for parents, and I had several members of the community going, this is how you're fixing the high school math program. You're dumbing down the standards. And to be able to say, wait, hold on. What we're actually doing is, I'm just agreeing with Matt that this isn't not necessarily the process is wrong or the solution is wrong, but it's just this community is as interconnected as any place anyone is ever going to want to live. You could not flush your toilet next door for a week, and your neighbor's going to know about it forever.
Speaking of which,
Yes, I know. I'm working on it. I think we have to respect our community and respect the parents of our community and say, before we do things, we're including them in the process, just like we did with the LCAP. Bring them in so they see it, they know it, they feel it, and they can go out and help us be champions for this and say, wait a minute. Look at why, because in the end, that was the question I think most people wanted to know. Not what is going on here. Why are we doing this? And if we can explain it to parents, like we explained it to students, and we can get student buy-in, I think we can easily get parent buy-in. Because if it's going to work with the kids, that's all the parents want to see. Is in the end, does my kid get it? Does the high school diploma that my kid get from Mountain House High School mean something?
And if I can address that too, Mountain House High School has UC approved A through G courses, and we are in candidacy accreditation by WASC. When they submit their transcripts to colleges and universities, it looks the same. Colleges and universities do not ask for, but what is your percentage breakdown?
Sure.
Because they can't. Most schools have multiple different breakdowns of percentages. And what really matters is when WASC came to visit us is your program rigorous? Are you grading kids in a coordinated way? And that's our rubric grading. It's our mastery-based grading system. The percentages mean a whole lot less to a college and university than do the actual grade that gets reported on the transcript.
And I would disagree with any of that. I'm just saying, like I say, it really just comes down to if we'd have been able to explain this to the parents beforehand, so they knew it was coming, so they saw it and could appreciate it for what it is, that you wouldn't have had to be here tonight. That's my opinion. You wouldn't have had to explain this because most of the folks would know, and there'd be a one-off that we could say, oh, did you see the presentation? Did you go to the event? Did you? And that's just it's difficult. I realize that what we're asking for is work above and beyond the normal school day, but I just think in this situation, it would help, and I would like to see us try to focus on that in the future. Is that I don't know if it was a fall down on this side. I'm not blaming anyone at all. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to create a problem, but a solution. That's what I'd like to say.
So a couple of things that I think could go in the Mustang Messenger that would help. You talked to us about WASC. We went through it with you last year. I've gone through it with schools from the district level. Generally, the public has no idea what that is. What is WASC accreditation? So maybe they need that explanation. As adults, we're looking for something to compare our high school experience to what these kids are going through now. You can't. You absolutely can't. My B in algebra doesn't mean anything with the way the students are learning now. I didn't get a B in algebra. I'm sure it was way lower. So you have such a powerful tool in your Mustang Messenger, and it's going out. And I think snippets of information in there will really help the parent base to understand what exactly is this. We've heard so much about it, and I did have an idea of what this looked like, but like they've said, the parents are looking for that comparison. That's why they need more of an explanation. That's the only reason.
well, let's face it, they're evaluating what they hear based on their personal experience framework.
Of course, no, it wasn't a criticism by any means. Because when we first started hearing about Common Core, we were looking for the similarities. What's the alignment here? Well, the alignment's completely different. You can't compare it. Yeah, which is why our state testing went away, because you couldn't compare it. And the test is so different now, because you can't compare a student who got 90% of something on the STAR test to what they're going to get on the CASP. There's no way to look at them and compare them.
Right, and the other thing to remember is that the PSAT and the SAT have also changed drastically. And if you look at AP courses, which we offer quite a few of, AP courses are all rubric scored, mastery-based testing as well. So we're aligning ourselves with that.
Okay, I think we've got some stuff to work on, and I think the superintendent can move forward on that.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Ben.
Thanks
I
for the
appreciate
presentation.
it.
Appreciate
And
it.
thanks for your
And
patience.
good work
with
out
me.
there. Thank you.
Thank you for your passion. That's my favorite part.
Yeah.
I love when Ben comes and talks because it explains what the energy is at the high school, and I just love it.
Any more for your report?
None.
Okay. Item B, district maintenance operations report.
We're very close to finalizing our 5-year projected plan based on deferred maintenance needs and routine maintenance needs. We're estimating close to $400,000 needed in the next fiscal year for projects, one of them being at Lammersville, the playground area around the playground could cost close to $200,000 potentially. We haven't gone out for bid, so we don't know for sure, but I think it's obviously something that we need to pay attention to. Bethany and Wickland. Wickland has additional carpet replacement. We have, I think, one building left there. Mr. Nolan has worked very hard with Lori Robertson to get an idea. I'm pleased and thankful to have him. I've had several people come to me and email me, very grateful for the attention to detail and how he responds to their needs and the staff responds to their needs.
So where are the Gophers this week?
I haven't heard a thing about the Gophers, so I'm guessing.
We don't talk about them. Maybe they'll go.
It was the worst week was when they went down a number and then they went back up a week later. So
Yes, and then I do know that there was an irrigation pump over at Lammersville that is also in needs of possible replacement or repair. Oh, we repaired it again. It's an old school.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the work on that. Committee reports, item A is facility use. We had our meeting on the 24th of August. The minutes from the meeting have been included in the packet. We have an amendment to the handbook that's coming based on that meeting. And special thanks to Lori and Alvina for all the hard work that they've been doing. We are in the process of collecting applications, and we're going to put them all together and go through the approval process for inside facility requests, which will take place starting in October.
So would a question on the minutes be appropriate now or later when we do the handbook?
Is it related to the amendment?
Something in the minutes. No, it's not
Okay,
related to the
go ahead.
handbook. So I just had a real quick question. In the minutes, it talks about that you, Alvina, reported out how many staff hours it took, but the number wasn't in the minutes, and I was
Right,
just
I
curious.
guess I took
Yeah.
it that the packet was available on the website, but I did take a note. Lori obviously spends a significant number of time, and her contract hours equate to 76 days. That's 608 hours in 12 months. Mine equates to about 19 days, and Mr. Nolan's is 15 days out of a contract year.
Thank you. It's a lot of time and a lot of work.
But our meetings are getting shorter, and
Yes, that's what I was hoping.
so we're starting to get there. I think we're making progress, and I appreciate all the hard work on that.
Can I add too, I appreciate you sharing the link for the video of the meeting so that, it could be shared with folks in the public. I'm looking forward to our first joint meeting with the CSD because I think that meeting more than ones we've had in the past illustrates the fact that the school district's busting at the seams with regards to facilities. So I'm glad you shared the video, and I wanted to thank you for that.
Sure. I'm not sure. Do we have reports yet? Other committee reports? Okay. Governing board reports.
I have nothing to report.
Nothing to report. Okay.
First, I wanted to apologize to the board, the district, and the community for missing the last school board meeting. I do take my responsibilities very seriously. It was unavoidable. I did attend the first football game in Ripon this past Friday. The teams, it was a single elimination tournament to determine who was better, and our boys played very well and took second place in the tournament, and Ripon, in spite of their best efforts, took second to last. There is a home game on Friday. I'm looking forward to that one. And on apropos of a teacher comment, on teacher satisfaction, I'm renewing my question about a meeting. We had said that we would put that on an agenda item. I can't speak on Facebook, right? I can't share my comments on Facebook. I can't share my comments in a meeting that it's not on the agenda. We did say that we would have a meeting, or that was the goal. So I would say that we need to either move that forward or say, you know what, that's not going to work because the union doesn't want to, or whatever. But I think we need to close the loop on that, because right now it's just a pending item.
I'm well aware, and it will be scheduled.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. And that's it for me.
I did not get to attend the football game, but did attend one of the first junior varsity and varsity boys soccer game at our very own Mustang Stadium. Are we calling it the Corral? We got to really come up with an official nickname. We got to figure this out. The Range. Okay. So, just the whole idea of varsity sports. Deranged? No, that's just
Deranged.
That's just me. It's just really exciting to think about the prospect of varsity sports in the community. I happen to know that there was a huge contingent going to Ripon. I can't wait to see this Friday night. Unfortunately, I can't attend, but I will add to my governing report, I'm inviting everyone to the September 11th home game, where yours truly will be barbecuing for the boosters for the varsity game. I didn't win the barbecue competition, but I'm going to do better this time, I promise. And that was it.
Unfortunately, I got stuck at work and couldn't make it to Ripon because I had to prepare board agenda items for work. But I wanted to be there, but I will be there this Friday night, and I'm looking forward to that. I also attended the Mountain House High School back-to-school night, and I purposely went into two classrooms of brand-new teachers who had no idea who I was. They were amazing. I remember the first time as a young teacher talking to parents, and I think I stood there and went, They were poised, they were mature, they knew what they expected from the students, and they fielded questions so well. And it was nice to show off the school to a friend of mine who came with me, who said, I've never seen the school. I said, it's back to school night, come with me. Mr. Faubert did a great job with his orientation with the parents to start the evening. I just love showing off that school. It's our shining glory. And that's it for me for now.
I did go to the football game at Ripon, and it was very entertaining. I don't recall the scores, but it's irrelevant.
We took second.
You are correct, sir. There was a very impressive showing from Mountain House. We packed the inadequate stands that they had there, and there were a lot of people standing up. It was a very entertaining evening. I also was able to go to back-to-school night at Cuesta School, and I think I hit most of the classrooms, although there are a lot there. And I was very impressed by our teachers and the way they presented what's going on in the district to the parents who were in attendance. I also went to back-to-school night at Lammersville for the first time in many, many years, not as a parent. So that was interesting, although I have grandkids there now, so I guess it's almost the same. But also very impressed at how the teachers presented what's going on in the district and how our teaching is working and that sort of thing. I went to the back-to-school night at Mountain House High School as a parent this time, and that was very enjoyable. I was quite impressed with the teachers there as well, how they explained what was going on and what the expectations are for their students, and it was good. That concludes my report.
A lot of my free time has been spent with CSBA. They're really hitting some legislation hard. CSBA is really trying to flex the muscle with not only the legislators, but I think with the governor. I've asked for an item to be added on the action items for our board to support Senate Bill 799, which was actually co-authored by many of our legislators who I've been in contact with, and they're eagerly awaiting my call tomorrow to let them know if it passed or not. But with that, I just want to, again, compliment the board, and because of my involvement with CSBA, I hope that we start to become a little more political, especially as our district grows. I think it's, it's something we've never done in the past, and with growth, I think it's time. So that's why I've asked for that to be put on there. And I'm also heavily involved with the Policy Platform Committee with CSBA, and I'll bring that forward. And then, do you want to make your announcement now while we're talking CSBA, or?
I think we'll pause on that and just leave it kind of hanging out there like one of those old movie trailers.
So, yeah, there might be an announcement coming, maybe.
Can I add something? Are you finished?
Yes, please.
Okay, I forgot to mention that what a great idea it was for the Teachers Association to be handing out magnets of the school calendar at back to school night. So now every parent who stopped there, calendar's right on the refrigerator. Thank you.
Very good. Yeah. All the back to school nights.
All the back to school nights had them? What a great idea.
All right, moving into action items.
Becky, he needs one.
Item A, consider approval of updated 2015-16 intra-district transfers.
I move we approve the 2015-16 inter and intra-district transfers.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, consider approval of San Joaquin County Office of Education revisions to the 2015-16 Local Control Accountability Plan. Staff report.
Yeah, real quick, the county is our oversight for the LCAP. They too have to build a plane while flying it. They're learning to provide feedback. They got feedback from the people they provide feedback to, and they came and told us to make some superficial changes to our LCAP. This is just because there were changes, we're bringing it forward. An example would be they asked us to change the word implement to maintain, things like that. We have clean copies for the board here. If anybody would like a clean copy of the superficial change document, Noel has some copies over there, and it's on the website. But the county the county answers to the state. They're getting their feedback as well. So we worked with our friends over there and made the changes.
Board discussion?
Yeah. Okay. Unfortunately, the view I have in front of me is sideways and I can't turn it. So on page 10 of 80. No, because this one has the highlights. So on page 10 of 80, in the section about Williams, the line above the highlight, if you read it carefully, it's missing something. It says...
You lost me at 10 above 80.
Okay, 10 of 80 on page 10.
Got it.
On page 10, the line above it, not only is it sideways, it's small. Maintain that 100% of the teachers hold appropriate credentials and 100% of the students have access to adequate instructional as measured. Something's missing after the word instructional.
Okay. Materials. We'll make that.
Okay.
We'll make that material adjustment.
Okay. Then, because of the way the LCAP is written, there's a lot of repetition for the years out. So it's the same exact thing on page 16 and page 22. So you can just write those page numbers. It's the same thing that's missing. And it only brought that to my attention because it was right above the line that was highlighted.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, scroll to page 45. Where am I? 22. I'm gonna bring a laptop that I can switch these.
Yeah. It's great.
Something's wrong. I don't know what happened to mine.
PDF, you can type in the page number.
Jacked up.
Yeah. Okay. So, this is just a bugaboo with me, especially since so much we're supposed to be concentrating some of our funds for foster youth. Should the highlighted section say parents and guardians? We don't reference guardians.
That was a mandate to be written that way by the San Joaquin County Office of Ed. This is their language. I will happily share that with them.
Okay, thank you.
You're right.
I mean, we're focusing on foster youth. They're not living with their parents, and we're not giving their parents information. We're giving their guardians information.
You're
Yeah.
right. You are 100%.
So and that was the same on page 48 and 51.
We can add a parenthetical. I think that we can go rogue on that just slightly.
Okay. You know, we have lots of students who live with aunts and uncles, and they're not all considered parents.
I confess that in some sections we took out the word foster youth, and in the one section they had us added in, and I was confused, but I kind of was approaching this from the assumption that San Joaquin County Office of Education was kind of telling us this is what you have
Well,
to
if
do.
they put it in writing, we would know.
Well,
Most counties
agree.
put in writing what they wanted the districts to change, and they did not.
They did come out for a 2-hour visit.
Yeah, that's not in writing.
Yes.
And that's not a criticism of
yes.
Lammersville. I'm frustrated with what we did not get from San Joaquin.
Well, I can say that they did hire 2 additional staff members at the County Office of Education to assist with this. One on the instructional side, one on the business side. They'll work together and visit the sites. So
And
that
they
is
will,
something
but
that they
that's
realized
moving
after
forward.
the fact. Exactly.
Thus,
Translation
again, my
is there's a
frustration.
new set of bureaucrats to look over the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Well, and, you know, I think it also, we should recognize that if they want our approval on this document, they're going to have to be specific with us, because we're not just going to sign a blank check. So I think that that's the message that needs to get back to San Joaquin County.
And I did email the district and ask about, can we see the letter? Because most people know I work in education. I worked on our LCAP, and our director of CNI showed me the letter that the county had written, these are the changes you need to make. And I said, that's interesting. I wonder what San Joaquin gave us. And what I got was a letter that was full of excuses. And that was all that we got from our counties. Thus, I'm frustrated. Yes, I know they sat down with you guys for many hours and told you what they wanted. But if they want future changes, they're going to say, we told you that, and we have nothing to say, no, you didn't, or yes, you did.
True.
So
Good point.
I'm trying to protect us from them changing their minds, where the law said we're supposed to get it in writing, and we didn't. Okay. Page 55. No, that was 55. No, that was
45.
okay. No, that was 50.
That was 45.
What's okay? So on 55, what is the Ed 1 stop?
There were 2 sites, I believe it was Lammersville and Cuesta, that purchased this program that they were using with their students. I know that on my end, I saw the PO come through and the invoice, but I'm not sure
Is it
how
an
they were.
online program
I'm going to ask Mrs. Sherburne, because I know that we're going to
Yeah? Okay, the
possibly.
teachers are saying yes. Okay. Oh, I've heard of Brain Pop. Okay, I guess that was called, in this, it was listed as the publisher, and that's.
Yeah, I guess
okay.
so.
Ed One Stop is a portal, basically, through the Contra Costa County Office of Education, where if you subscribe to the Ed One Stop that they have, within that, there are all kinds of online resource subscriptions that we can leverage by virtue of the fact that many counties and districts are participating through this, that the cost price is a lot lower. So Brain Pop Junior, Online Britannica is there. Of course, being on the spot, I can't remember the rest of them.
That's okay.
But there are several really great resources that are in there. Grolier is in there that now the teachers have access to for nonfiction web-based resources, as well as other curricular materials.
And I think we're going to pursue this district-wide now, correct?
So it is.
Yes.
When you signed off, we added the other sites that didn't have the subscription prior, and then the 2 sites that had it prior will be picked up so that everybody has it now district-wide. They're just on separate contracts, and in January they'll all be on one contract, but everybody has it.
Okay. I hadn't heard of it referred to as that. I have heard of Brain Pop. That's probably the most popular one. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Last thing, I think. Last one. Last highlight, third line as well as, and it's just a grammatical thing. There are 2 sets of highlights. So in the second one,
Page number?
I'm still on 55.
Okay.
On the third line, as well as opportunities. See, it says broad course of studies as well opportunities for push-in.
It's missing as.
It's missing as, that's all. You highlighted it, I had to read it.
Is it in the yellow section? Because this is like 4-point font, and I
Yeah.
really need to bring glasses.
It's in the yellow section. There's an as missing.
I just want to point out that the SJCOE feedback has a typo. I just want to point that out.
Yeah,
All right, we got it.
exactly.
We got it.
SJCOE has a typo in it. And so because of the repetitious nature of the LCAP, that'll also show up on 58, 61, and 65. Thank you. I'm done.
I did have I'm sorry, but I had a couple of questions on the edits. On page 87 of the packet, not the report, but the packet, the LCFF base went from 225K to 17K.
And the 17,000 was the original, when we were preparing the LCAP projection of what I thought was going to be spent on those, but it obviously was not. If you look at the right-hand side, we spent a considerable amount of money on the after-school sports, the high school athletics, and all extracurricular activities within the district.
Right, okay. And her and I had talked about this before, but since there are some big changes in those numbers, I wanted to put it on the record.
Wishful thinking.
Supplemental funding on page 88 went from 338,000 to 441,000 as well.
We had a change in the percentage proportionality, and it should have been at the corrected amount.
So in both of those cases, it was newer, better
Yes.
information
Yes.
subsequent to our initial submittal, not we just blew it.
Correct.
Okay. Just want to make that clear.
Do we have a due date from the county on this stuff? Is this pressing?
That is a good question. I don't have an answer for that.
I know the answer. You have 20 days from the time that they give you the feedback to get it approved and back to them.
So yes, we have a pressing deadline.
And that wasn't in their letter either.
We could
Well, we'll have
provision.
another board meeting before then, correct?
Well, no, they met last week, and I think there's a 3-week gap here. So we could always do what they asked us to do, and then come back and look at it again if you'd like. We could amend these superficial things as much as we want, but like I said, they I don't know. You read the letter.
That doesn't really say anything.
No, it doesn't. And you know, the things that I pointed out, I don't think they're substantial, and I would feel perfectly comfortable approving with the amendments that were mentioned tonight. I don't know about other board members.
I do.
I mean, a little as here and the word materials or something like that.
I'll step out there. Move to approve San Joaquin County Office of Education revisions to the 2015-2016 Local Control Accountability Plan.
I'll second, but with discussion. Go ahead. First,
As amended, yeah.
I'm sharing, I think, what Matt's concerns are, and this is a perspective of what Sharon's stating. We're currently in a position where we're being told we have to do certain things, but we're not being shown the evidence behind that, and we're not being given something we can hold our hands on and say, a year from now, 2 from here, 3 from now, when something goes wrong, either at the county level or somewhere else, and they say you shouldn't have done that, we have nothing we can point to and say. I mean, it's hysterical to me that we can be required by the state and the county to take certain measures and steps that are required, and the county and the state are also required to do certain things, and you just kind of go, yeah, but we're not really you, so we can do whatever we want. I find it infuriating and frustrating to no end. Having said that, I do think most of the changes that they requested, most of the highlighted stuff, wasn't overly worrisome.
That's
But
right.
I want to go back to another part here. Earlier tonight, we thanked an enormous number of people who spent an enormous amount of time to get this thing right, and that the county couldn't get their part right, to me, disrespects the work that all of you put into this thing. And I would just appreciate if they could actually do their job like we did ours and you did yours. So that's the part of it that really frustrates me more than anything. But having said that, I will.
But you realize they are the state, and they can do as they please, and their ambiguity is to their benefit, because they can tell us later on, you were supposed to do this, we told you to do this, you didn't do it.
I know.
I can speak that when the first set of feedback came back, that the superintendent of the county and I had an energetic conversation. I had another conversation with the CBO of the county and the executive director of the county who's in charge of this project. And again, they're all good people, but we did have some energy and expression exchanged about the things you're speaking to now.
Well, I'm disappointed in the county that they haven't been specific. They're expecting us to sign a blank check, and I will be reaching out to the county superintendent to express my displeasure with this and tell them, again, it's procedural, fix the process. This is wrong, what they're doing.
Some of the highlights, and I know because our staff is giving us exactly what the county, when you sat down with them, told you to make changes in the LCAP. Some of them were beyond ridiculous. And I must say, some at work were beyond ridiculous also. And I think we have people sitting at the county office that are making these beyond ridiculous suggestions to school districts to justify their jobs. And that bothers me. This is children's money that's being wasted on some of this stuff. I'm done.
First and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item C, consider approval of provisional internship permits for certificated employees, Mr. Tony Gonzalez, Ms. Jennifer Marquez, and Ms. Gia Pagani.
I'll move for approval. Oh, do you
Any
have
staff report?
anything? No. We've done a couple of these before this year, so I will move for approval of the provisional intern permits for the teachers listed.
No, they're both for items later.
Second.
I just wanted, it's in the packet, so anybody that reviewed the packet will see it. There's a large number of steps that the district goes through to find talent, certificated talent. And they've gone through that process and can't. And, so this is what we're doing and this is why. But it's not that we're just, sitting on our hands and, oh, well, let's just do the provisional internship permits.
I would wager to guess that we're not the only district doing this at their first board meeting of the year after, 2 weeks ago, announcing an emergency need for fully qualified teachers. This is not a step we want to take, but when we're in a position where we can't fill the roles with fully certified teachers, we can't have classrooms with 35 kids in it. We have to find a way to handle this, and this is it. And it is something we have, I know we've done in the past when we were on the elementary board. I don't know if the unified boards had to do this that much in the past, but it's a function of where we're at. And
just done it recently.
Yeah.
I've been in HR for 12 years. I have never processed a provisional intern permit at work, and I just prepared my third one.
Mr. President, if I could add just a couple of pieces of data here. So just to respond to Trustee Clemens' statement, there were 1,603 applications pre-screened this year, and of those, 997 were for certificated applicants. The total number of pre-interview reference checks was 411. Certificated applicants, 322 of those. Total number of interviews, 310. Certificated applicants that were interviewed, 231. The total number of employees hired, 61. 56 of those are certificated. The staff in HR, our principals, and other administrators in the district have attended job fairs at San Joaquin County Office of Ed, Stanislaus State, Fresno State, recruitment fairs, teachers' colleges, additional funding or recruitments, and all the way up to Chico State. EdJoin, advertising in Craigslist. There's a significant effort when you hear those numbers and know that there's a staff of 3 people doing most of that work, and the screening and the pre-screening and the interviews being done by principals and administrators and the like. So there is a monumental effort made to find staff for our district.
That's what I was. Thank you for adding the
Staggering.
meat.
Absolutely staggering.
When you were speaking, it did actually bring up a question that I have. In the corporate world, one of the metrics that we look at is accepted offers. Like once you go through the whole process, you interview, you do background checks, you provide an offer, and then the candidates that rejects, why, what percentage is that, and why? Is that a relevant statistic in
Small
education?
But
Okay.
it happens.
All right.
Yeah, and all of the professional publications talk about a teacher shortage nationwide. It's not California, it's everywhere.
First and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item D, consider approval of new CSEA job description, maintenance worker, and updated CSEA job description, food service worker. Staff report?
None.
He's looking at me. Well written.
Wow, that's
There were
high.
three
That's really
sets of
high
eyes
praise, by
looking
the way.
at this.
It is high praise.
Any other board comments?
No, go.
I will move for approval of the new CSEA job description for maintenance worker and updated CSEA job description for food service worker.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item E, consider approval of 2015-16 Facilities Use Rental Handbook, Amendment Number 1. So this is as a result of our last Facility Use Committee meeting. Would you like to make a report?
In your packet, I have included the amendments to one. One of them, I know we'll probably discuss the signs. We've had some issues with the gates also being locked when they shouldn't be locked. Bless Lori Robertson running out to the school site to unlock it. There was miscommunication between people. But I know that there has been some concern about, obviously there isn't anything we can do on the weekends, but during the school week, when school's in session the next day, making sure that there are no people loitering around on our campuses at night, in the middle of the night, and making sure that the grounds are ready for the kids the next morning. So that was kind of one of the reasons why we'd hoped to put up these signs, so there was a reason that we can stop people from going onto the campus after dusk.
And then the other one, I would again like to thank Mr. Faubert for coming to the meeting and participating with the group. We've opted to set a policy, pending approval, of course, as far as the culinary arts classroom, that they can be reserved by Tier 1 organizations.
I did have a question. At our last board meeting, excuse me, we talked about the possibility of changing the parameters of the scheduling to get rid of that 30 days after school starts. Was that discussion too late for this amendment?
We haven't revisited yet.
Okay.
We need to do some more work on that, and part of that is a
That
discussion.
would be for next year anyway.
And part of the discussion that we did have is trying to see if we can get the software company to work with us and help us with that kind of application process. So we're still working on it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion on the,
I had a question, but Alvina actually answered it in her commentary.
or Dustin Don?
Yeah.
I move we approve the Facilities Use Rental Handbook Amendment Number 1.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item F, consider approval of updated board policy and administrative regulation, BP and AR 3551, food service operations cafeteria fund. Staff report?
This is simply taking a board policy, administrative regulation, and making it meet the practice that we're doing versus the language. Alvina will have more specifics if you have any questions.
Board discussion?
I just had a question as to, I thought board policies, unless it was an emergency that something needed to be passed right away, that it came to us informational first and then we approved it at the next meeting. I was just curious why this came for approval. There's nothing huge
I
in it.
think we were thinking about quantity. There was 1, 2. If you like, we can, move to the first reading.
I was just curiosity. There's nothing major.
Last time we had visited these policies was in 2008, so there was a revision in 2012 regarding the USDA requirements. So that has also been included in here, and we have to follow it.
And I did discuss that with the superintendent and kind of made a judgment call. I thought that was minor enough that we could do it.
Yeah, the changes were minor, but I did have one question.
Yes.
In the AR, it talks about that elementary students can go 2 lunches beyond what they have paid for.
Yes.
And at the high school, no negative balance.
Correct.
Is that a
she had initially
recommendation,
had
or-
that. The balances were so high that once she implemented this, they dropped and kids started paying. So we thought, if it's working, let's keep it.
Mess with it.
Obviously, we'll bring it to you.
So
But
we
we were-
implemented it, and it's working, and hungry children are being fed.
Yes, and exciting,
good.
there's already 83,000 in the bank.
Okay, thank you.
This is off topic, but extends off of what you said, Mr. President. As a concept, I think that if it's a minor policy, it can be effectively brought in as a voting item, because we could table it if one of us thinks, so there's no reason to have it at two meetings, so on your discretion, of course.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that was kind of my thought too, and we had that discussion, was, hey, if,
Well, and last year when we talked about this, we were getting 15 or
Yes.
20 of these things at a time, and it was.
That was because of Mr. Faubert and his high school.
No, and I'm not saying that, but that was wise, because it was like, oh my gosh, you have to
Yeah.
read it and understand, and then make all the changes and make sure the
Yeah.
changes are right.
No, I was fine with that. I was just curious because it was the first time, I think, in a while that we did that. I did have one more question. Somewhere in I think it's in the AR, it talks about net cash not going, the balance should not exceed 3 months' expenditures.
Correct, that's just been a
What
rule.
happens if it does? Does the money get moved somewhere else?
I think we would probably have to bring forward to the board reducing prices that we
Oh,
charge for
okay.
meals. I do know, though, aging equipment at Lammersville, we'll likely need to start replacing the equipment there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have a motion yet? I
do not.
Move to approve updated board policy and administrative regulation BP/AR 3551 food service operations/cafeteria fund.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item G, consider approval of Prop 39 energy expenditure proposal from IES. Staff?
Alvina.
I am not as experienced with the energy, so we had, at no fee, signed a contract at no fee unless we canceled, with a company, Indoor Environmental. Yes, I wanted to spell it out. If you had any questions, he has provided 3 scenarios. Me being the money person, I went with a scenario that cost no money. That was what I was recommending, but obviously if you have any questions to pursue any of the other 3 options that are presented to you, ask your questions, he's here.
I did. It looks to me like the biggest unknowns in the analysis are the assumed inflation factors of 4%, as well as the investment numbers, i.e. how much it would cost, especially the solar analysis, which is number 3. How, quote unquote, known are those investment numbers?
Okay, so IES operates as a design build company. So these numbers that we're submitting to the California Energy Commission on investment side are firm. So these are actual real.
So those are like not, for us, those
IES.
would be not to exceeds.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't want them to change, because if they were to change in any way, we have to resubmit to the California Energy Commission and have the bureaucrats that manage the bureaucrats re-go through the process, and it costs a lot of soft costs that way. So they are all fixed. Yes, you're right that the energy escalation and the analyses are assumed. They are far less than what PG&E has been lately, just so you know. The average has been about 4.6% over the last 10 to 12 years, and recently there's been jumps because of the demand. So the PG&E can state that they have only so much of an increase, but you're a peak user, and therefore your rates go up higher.
Okay, I have a remediation question for me. I'm sorry. Who is our electricity provider?
Well, Lammersville has a separate provider than we have here. I think it's Modesto Irrigation.
Yeah, they have an MID.
Right. So mine is Modesto Irrigation
Yes.
District, not
Yeah,
not
right.
PG&E.
Correct.
What about
Lammersville.
Lammersville Unified?
Lammersville Elementary,
Oh, Lammersville Elementary has.
Civic Gas and Electric.
Right.
They have. Okay, well, we're talking apples and apples then.
Yeah, well, there's.
Sorry.
And the bulk of the work is going on there, but yes, MID has definitely had less increases.
Okay, that makes
past.
that 4% then makes more sense to me. And actually, if you used a higher inflation factor, the numbers would actually appear better because you get that much more savings off of it.
Right, and the fact is that the state pays for 100% of this over time, so you could put a very conservative inflation factor in there if you wished.
Right.
Okay, I didn't have any questions about the content. Procedurally, on the board agenda item, what IES stands for should be the first time IES is mentioned, because I'm reading the agenda and I'm on, IES, what on earth is that? And I wrote, what is IES? And then I keep reading and it appears later in the page. So the first time IES is mentioned, anytime you use an abbreviation, it should be explained there.
Correct. You're correct.
Thank you.
Just briefly, we have over 80 school districts approved at the California Energy Commission, far more than any other company. So we're design build, but we're private corporations, so we self-perform more, and we don't have the public return shareholder expectations, so we can get more of them done for smaller districts like yours that have these.
And the scenario number 3, you assumed a 50, unfortunately, my PDF on my computer is messed up, but I think you assumed a 15-year note at 3.5% interest to finance the cost?
Yes.
3.6? Sorry.
Yes, sir. And that was a quote from a leasing company that I know well. We don't have any ties to the funding, but it's a municipal equipment lease, so it's tax exempt, so therefore there is no tax burden, so they can offer these types of rates.
Okay.
And the only reason I offered that scenario is that would kind of finish off these 4 sites to the potential of, if you were going to install generation, they are now right-sized, because solar is very expensive. So you want to make sure that you get your use down first and then go with a solar generation.
Yeah, I'm struggling with this one because I'm putting that in counterpoint to a previous presentation that we had that said, that there, like it was going to be for, like the payback period was significant, and I'm just struggling. I don't know that I'm ready to vote, but if, like on a particular item, but anyway, those are all my comments or questions.
Anyone else have any comments for this representative?
Thank you very much.
Appreciate the
Thank you
presentation.
very much.
I'd like to better understand your position. Yeah, I mean,
I don't, my thing is if I'm voting to do something, I don't know that I don't know that I have enough information. And I guess it's because we got a presentation from a quote unquote expert that said there isn't an analysis, that you're not going to get value. It's going to be a long payback period. And the other one might not have assumed a 15-year note. I mean, if you look at the, like number 3, where you actually put in the photovoltaic, the PV, you actually don't ever go cash out of pocket. That, you get the Prop 39 funds before you actually start paying out, and because you're financing the cost over the 15 years, you're never actually out of pocket from a cumulative basis. Some years you go out of pocket, but on a cumulative basis, it's always positive, which means the district starts making money and never stops for the 25 years in the analysis. And I'm trying to put the previous presentation and this presentation in counterpoint and say, yes, I like the idea of making money, of going positive and never going negative. I mean, that sounds really good. So I don't have a position. I don't know.
Okay. And I want to echo that. I think what we're talking about here is we had a presentation not long ago where it was a discussion of we could never afford a solar component that would make some sort of fiscal sense, that in the end, the bottom line, the juice never met the squeeze, to use, I think, the term you used that night. And in this case, we're looking at something that could end up potentially having a positive cash flow by the savings it's created offsetting, right? That's my understanding of how this is all working. And I would like a further analysis of that. I get not wanting to spend the money. I get that. But if we can lease it over a long term and end up where we're not really spending the money because we can plug that in from savings elsewhere, I've been saying all along I would love to see us explore energy alternatives, specifically because I have a great fear that those things are going to spike dramatically in the future as they want to push people more to energy alternatives. And if this is an opportunity to get in where we can afford it and not end up, bringing money out of the general fund to pay for this, net, I would love to see that alternative. So I'm kind of agreeing with Colin here. I'd like to see that alternative explored in more detail.
So the one comprehensive study we did, we had Chevron Corporation come out with their education package program, and they did a comprehensive analysis. And what I presented to the board at that time was there would be no money coming to the district until 17 years. The panels were 17 years old. So we'd be happily come back and get more information and gather questions.
You want to respond to that?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think this is all my fault. Clarification about these projects. None of these involve solar. Okay? This option 3, okay?
I was totally reading that as a solar project.
This is solar preparation. Okay, so your school, you have your HVAC systems and your lighting systems, and those that control both. They use about 80% of your school's load. Okay, we do $200 million. I've done $200 million in solar. You know, Manteca down the street. What you need to do prior to pursuing solar, which is a very large investment, is to right-size your load. Squeeze down your use as much as possible. So that scenario 3 is doing the Super T8 lighting systems in the newer schools, as well as the other measures we were going to do to right-size that load to get ready for solar.
So my fear that I didn't understand what the analysis meant was actually correct.
Yes, and it was my fault. So,
Okay.
That's why we're on this end of the table.
so the option that the staff has recommended fixes the deferred maintenance issues of the HVAC systems at Lammersville. It corrects the exterior lighting issues at most of the campuses that had a good payback that the California Energy Commission would allow, goes to LED lighting. And then at Lammersville specifically, it goes from the existing first generation fluorescent systems to the 5th generation, which are available now, which cut their lighting load 30 to 50% and improve lighting levels in that older campus. That's because there's a financial return hurdle to get through to the California Energy Commission, a net present value factor of 1.05 that we have to prove to them. Those are the numbers that we have to deal with. But if the district elected to go further to prepare themselves for a future solar installation, this would take care of the rest of it long term.
Which we could always revisit later, right?
Yes, sir.
But if we're looking right now where we could begin that preparation because it might make some fiscal sense, I still would like to see then us explore, does this create, if we can spend that money to create the potential 1, 2, 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road, whatever it might be, where we can explore that alternative and it now making
Does that change
decision
the
today-
payback on the
exactly
solar
right.
PV?
Making that decision today might help benefit that opportunity. I'd like to explore that a little further if we have the if we have
Because
the
that's
time
the
and
difference
opportunity.
between the recommended plan scenario 2 and scenario 3.
Right.
Because scenario 3 is the position yourself to pivot to solar.
Right, so the lighting reduces the solar size by so much that the solar costs significantly less than the lighting, the additional solar, right? So that's why you want to right size first.
Thank you very much. And I
Sure,
apologize.
sorry.
That I totally misunderstood that.
So this is not time sensitive?
No, it's not.
No, not at all.
David?
I would motion yes, or if we have the motion, I would ask that I move that we table this for further discussion.
Second.
Yeah, I believe we need to understand the whole situation, because gearing up for something that isn't going to work anyway is.
Absolutely.
Right, we shouldn't do scenario 3 if solar ultimately isn't going to make sense.
And in the end, as we talk about fiscal responsibility on this board quite a bit, for a lot of reasons, including the current atmosphere, I want to make sure if we're going to spend any money, there's the potential for the long-term savings that could benefit that bottom line for us to look at other areas of need.
So who would do never mind, we've tabled it then.
Yeah, we have a first and a second to table. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries to table. Item H, consider approval of Governing Board Resolution 151601 in support of Senate Bill 799, repeal of district reserve caps. And again, this was something I asked to bring forward. This Senate bill is co-authored by Kathleen Galgiani and Susan Eggman. I've reached out to both of their shops, and like I said, they're eagerly awaiting to hear how we vote, so.
So unless
any-
it's against the Brown Act, I would like to defer the motion to you since you've put so much work into this.
Absolutely. Any other staff report on that? No. All right, I will move to approve Governing Board Resolution 151601 in support of Senate Bill 799, repeal of district reserve caps.
And I will gladly second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and we'll need a roll call.
Matthew Balzerini.
Aye.
Colin Clements.
Aye.
Sharon Lampel.
Aye.
Shane Nielsen.
Oh, aye.
David Pombo.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Information discussion items. Item A is approved fundraisers for the 2015-16 school year.
So we have a new fundraising policy, a streamlined process, but we always collect them at the beginning of the year to start with the big pile. This is the list for this school year, and moving forward, the new streamlined process will be in place.
I have a couple of questions. So I noticed on the list that we had a couple of catalog sales, and our discussion last year was about the hard sell. So are we confident that these catalog sales, mixed bag, cookie dough, that these are not the hard sell ones that we discussed last year?
The approver is Dr. Gill, and she's at an HR conference this evening. So I will ask her that question. We can bring feedback. My understanding is it's not, and she's pretty diligent about keeping track of that, but I will double check that with her.
Okay. And there's something missing, because I plan on going, and I'm sure Mr. Pombo does. Bingo isn't listed for VAPA on this list. I was looking for it because I go a lot. I didn't see it.
I'm sure it'll get on there.
Yeah. Because we all got emails about the first ones coming up in a couple of weeks.
And maybe we approved it previously, but I don't recall.
No, this is the first one for this year, right?
And that's my question is, the board still needs to approve these. So I believe this, even if it comes back in consent, that's fine, but do you plan on bringing them back after discussion?
Yeah, so the new process is that we're going to approve this. This is just everybody's pile. But in the two-step process, if the bingo, for example, comes forward, then it would go to the principal first, then to Dr. Gill. Then on the Friday letter, if she approves something, it'll come to you guys, and then we'll bring back a formal approval at every other meeting. Or if there's nothing that happens, obviously we wouldn't, but...
As part of consent?
Correct.
Okay.
So this list will be on consent next time?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Item B, presentations to the board by non-district organizations. And for the board, there was a request by a board member to bring a presentation by an organization, which I wholeheartedly support. I just question as to whether or not how much relevance it brings to the district. And not so much for this one, but if we do this one, having potential organizations in the future that want to come just to promote themselves. And in the interest of time, is that something that we want to entertain? So, Trustee Clemens, did you want to speak any more to it? I know.
Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. We're all busy. My personal attitude is like, okay, if an organization is coming to us to promote themselves, i.e. to get membership, whatever, unfortunately, we won't know before, in order to put it on the agenda, you won't know exactly what their motives are. And an organization that their motives are, hey, we're actually here and we're not a district support organization, but in the case of Service Organization of Mountain House, which is the organization that brought apart about this discussion, we want to, we are here to help organizations, and that includes district support organizations, which makes us relevant. I don't think you'll be able to know that until you hear what the organization has to say. And I think that, as a board member, my thought is I kind of have to cast a wide net. And, listen to some 10-minute presentations that, may or may not, in order to know which, or, in order to know that. You're just not going to know. And I kind of feel like, well, I want to be informed about, what's going on. And if somebody wants to inform the board about what they're doing and how they're doing it and how they're helping the kids, then I would say I'm going to, my personal opinion is that we, grant latitude. And if a bunch of organizations come and it turns out that it's abusive to the board and the district and the staff, then we can reevaluate. But I don't see any reason to turn the faucet off before we even know there's a problem.
And I just so you know, I mean, I brought this, I've made my theme, I'm all about process and want to make sure that we, that we're doing things appropriately. And I have concern. With closed session taking us till 11 o'clock and midnight every meeting, I don't know that we have the time for that. But I'm sorry, go ahead, Shane.
Well, no, I would just add there's an important part of what you said in there that would make me want to lean towards an option. And that is, you said the word kids. And if we're talking about an organization that wants to come in here and tell us that there are ways to help our students, I would like to at least explore the possibility of hearing that. And my suggestion for something like this would be the president, as the person who controls the agenda, I don't see why it wouldn't be worth a 10 or 15-minute conversation with that organization to say, what do you want to talk about? What is this? What are you looking for from the board? What is the intent of your presentation? And if you can find some way to tie to what we're doing, great. And if not, not. I think that seems reasonable to me to find an option there where organizations that might either be trying to develop themselves within our community with an intent towards improving our community as it relates to our kids, we should at least try to help. I go back to, we're one of the only shows in town. If they want to come and give a presentation on why they want to go from, this option to that option or other things, we need to look to avail ourselves of opportunities. There's not a Rotary Club. I mean, there's not all of these other things that are typically out there where they'd have those avenues to go to explore, to provide other resources to our students through other avenues. And I think that we should look to try where reasonable to do that. I agree. I don't like being here till midnight either, but if we can tie it to what we're doing, I think it's a good idea to at least explore options.
And as Mr. Nielsen was talking, I was writing almost the exact same thing. We vote in our board president and trust the board president to make decisions regarding our agenda. I trust the president and the legal secretary of the board, that's the superintendent, to check the relevance of an organization. What is its effect on our schools? The board president also has the right to limit time on presentations. So I am perfectly comfortable leaving the discretion up to the board president and the superintendent as to what comes forward and what doesn't, because there is stuff out there that is not relevant at all to us as a policymaking board, but there are organizations like the one you're talking about that probably does have relevance. So I trust the discretion of those that we trust with the agenda.
Okay. Mr. Pombo, any comments?
No, I have nothing to add.
Okay. Thank you for the discussion. Item C, board oversight of foundation events. You want to start it off?
Yeah, I was informed by the principal of one of our schools that a foundation came forward with an event that they wanted to do, which was outside the norm of the way they had done it in the past, and that involved the school carnival and a beer garden. So I brought it forward to the board president and to the board agenda to be able to discuss this through and thoroughly in terms of board oversight, board liability, district liability in an event like this. We've asked one of our attorneys from Lozano Smith to come forward to ask any of your questions because it's a change of practice, and when you have alcohol, it's important to talk that stuff through.
And for me, there's kind of, it's twofold. One is the process in the approval, and again, going into this not knowing the position of the board, I think that we need to have that discussion is, do we approve of such an event? And then secondly, if the board doesn't approve, what kind of authority do we have to to have the event not occur? Or what authority does the foundation have to say, well, great, you don't approve, but we're going to do it anyway? So I kind of wanted to talk this out and find out Specifically, WSF wants to hold an event and involving alcohol and involving kids. My personal opinion, I don't think they mix. I think that it incurs liability on the district. I think that if you want to have an event with alcohol, do it. Lammersville does a great job. They make a ton of money. There's no kids there. That's my personal opinion. I kind of guess would like to hear some comments on that.
Kids are, to point of clarification, children are not allowed at the Lammersville auction?
That is correct.
Okay.
And actually, I guess before I start the discussion, would you like to give a summary of the event? Me? It's your event, right?
As the Wickland School Foundation president.
Since you're here.
And dressed up.
Okay, so it's basically, like you said, we're just improving the carnival and the walkathon, and we're moving it off-site. In moving it off-site, that skirts the rule about not having alcohol on-site, which leaves open the option of having a beer garden. In this case, we are hoping to cordon off a section, put fences will be on both sides, and then we'll have rope or tape blocking off the rest of the way. It'll be adults-only section. The theory is to set up tables and games and shade, and just have Vino 100 or another vendor there just selling some beer. It's kind of a long event. It's going to be a walkathon as well, so there'll be kids walking around the entire park for 5 hours, and no parent wants to do that with them. So, okay, maybe some do, sorry. So this would give the parents a chance to just sort of hang out in the shade. Maybe we're going to put some games there, chess, checkers, just some games to sort of while away the time while the kids clock in their laps and raise their money for the school. So that's the basic idea. It's just some beer and some wine. As to your question about whether or not events in the past have occurred with students or with kids and alcohol, you did approve the barbecue last year at the Central Park for the boosters, which did have alcohol and did have kids. So there is a precedent for what I want to do.
So your carnival is moving to Central Park?
My carnival is going to be moving to Wickland Park.
Wickland Park.
But not the school park.
That is correct.
I don't think that event is all that different than and granted, before anyone throws anything at me for saying that the MHCSD has done an event, but I don't think that event is all that dissimilar from like the wine. There was a wine in the park where they had monogrammed glasses a number of years ago, and
it's the wine stroll.
And that's we have music in the park as a regular event, not a fundraising event.
We don't.
No,
we as a community do. And so allow me to finish, please. What I'm saying is that I understand your concerns about alcohol and children, and if if the focus of the event was to drink, then I would kind of I think that the board does have the right and the responsibility to look at events and say, what this event, or to provide guidelines, right? And say this is, these are the guidelines that we think that fundraising events should be, but we shouldn't be able to say, well, this particular implementation of those guidelines is okay, as long as 2 events meet the guidelines that we say this is what we will allow, then I don't think that we should, it's more strategic rather than tactical. I can say that, I have no problem with music in the park. The fact that Vino 100 is there's kids everywhere. It's a fun event. I think that this event that Corey is proposing could be a fun event. It doesn't feel to me like the focus is on drinking. To be honest, some of the events that were off-site, the focus was more on drinking, right? And so I'm kind of glad that it is adults only, because I had quite a bit to drink at the Lammersville auction. But anyway, so that's my personal view. I don't see anything, wrong with the idea. I also want to caution the board against stifling or putting a chilling effect on inventiveness. The best event in the world happened for the first time once. Somebody tried it. And the carnival, at one time, nobody had done the carnival. And it was a great event. And if, you know, if the board of an organization feels passionate about a activity or a fundraising event, then they're going to pour their heart and soul in it, and it'll be a successful event. If we start saying this is what you have to do, Corey, you know, the WSF has to do the carnival. They have to do it the way that they used to do it, and you can't change it. Then you're going to get what you're going to get. And speaking as the treasurer of boosters, if you tell me as an organization what I can and can't do, and you don't let us be inventive, then you're going to get a half-baked. That's not the word I. Yeah, half. You got it. That's what you're going to get. That's my feeling on that.
You know, I was contacted by a member who I believe is by a community member who's also a president of a different foundation, and they echoed a sentiment that I used, and yes, I'm going to bring it up again, as it relates to the track. What we're telling you is we don't trust you if we don't allow people to try new and different things, as long as we can find a rational, protective way to do it. You gate off or cordon off the section. You don't allow kids into it. You don't allow people to drink beyond capacity, which is, by the way, the law, so we're going to assume that our vendors are upholding the law. I don't see why we want to try to discourage those events, and I'm going to be selfish about it. That event is going to raise a lot more money for our foundation if that's allowed. Pure and simple. That's money our kids are going to get back. I'm a big believer in encourage and promote alternatives, kind of like we do in our high school education, and look for accountability when and if a mistake is made. You're going to get an attorney who comes up here, I guarantee you, saying liability. And I get it. But
the attorney can't say anything else.
That's their
have
job,
to
is
say
to
that.
explain what our possible consequences are. But I'm going to go back to, we have liability in high school football. Huge liability in high school football, do we not? And yet we still have that program. We have a ton of liability now with concussion-related injuries in most high school sports, but we're not cutting those things. Liability can't rule the day. It has to be a part of a measured decision-making process. And I worry that fear of liability is preventing us, or could prevent us, from taking advantage of opportunities that will help enrich our students. And I'm hoping we can find a way to reasonably allow events like this to take place.
I have one hesitation about it. I agree with everything the two of you have said. My hesitation is that this is a carnival for children. The focus is on children. The other events that you have mentioned, the focus is not on children. A carnival, a fall carnival, is about games and fun for children. That's the focus. These other events, it wasn't about kids. I don't have a problem with WSF taking an activity and going next door to the other park and having alcohol if the children weren't the focus of it.
You know what? If I could echo that a little bit, having had a wife that was on the board of WSF for a number of years, and blood, sweat, and tears in the carnival, and I'm there for setup, and I'm there for cleanup. If you ask the Bernie Hill, who was president, or Erica Smith Payne, who was president, or Stephanie, who is president, I'm there for carnival. I love that event. So a part of me is very sad that the event is changing. But the school board member in me says the right answer is to provide guidelines and say, now that you have those guidelines, go forth and be fruitful, be inventive, do what you're going to do. And if everybody hates it, next year, carnival will be back the way it was. And I think you have to let people succeed. And once you like you provide the guidance, I think you have to let them have some autonomy.
If it were a different event, I would feel differently. If it were the kite run by WSF, and it's not necessarily about children. A carnival is about children.
But I thought
That's
this was
my
a
issue.
general discussion, not one specific to this event.
Both.
I mean, I think.
Yeah, well, I'm
that-
giving
that's
a
what
general
raised the-
answer.
That's what
If
raised
it
the.
were a different type of event, I wouldn't have.
I'll just say that
any
after
concerns.
participating in the kite run, usually the last thing I want to do is drink anything except for water, and a lot of water. Okay, I
Bad
it's-
example.
But
Drop
I get what you're saying, but I come back to, in the end, we could narrow that focus. Everything WSF does is about children because that's where the money's going. And that's what I'm trying to focus on.
Disagree.
Well, again, this is my interpretation of what they do. Everything they're doing is about our students at every foundation and parent-teacher
The
organization.
Lammersville auction is all about kids, but the focus of the event itself is not on kids.
Sure.
That's my point.
I totally respect that opinion.
I agree too, but
We'll get there.
I agree.
Go ahead.
Okay, I agree with Mrs. Lampel because I don't think we should allow the alcohol at an event like that because it's just taking the focus away from the kids and putting more focus on the adults.
Thank you for your comments. Trustee Pombo?
Although Trustee Nielsen has already clued us in on what our legal will tell us, I would still like to hear from legal as to.
We'll get there.
I am not an attorney yet.
Well, and I just, I know I look at things askew because I was a police officer for 12 years. And of course, I kind of saw the worst of the worst. And a firefighter for 3 years now. So I in public safety, I look at things differently. I also know that the legal standard is that you knew or you reasonably should have known. And I think we have a responsibility with that. Blood, sweat, and tears, heart and soul going into these, I would hate to see that tarnished by the actions of someone under the influence of alcohol on their way home with their child in the car. I think that reflects poorly on the district. And like I stated, I just don't think that alcohol and these kinds of events mix. Is this still part of the report, or is this public comment?
No, I was going to respond to Ms. Lampel.
Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say that the focus of this event is not the carnival. The focus of this event is actually the walkathon, which the parents won't be participating with most of the kids. So it's actually a spot for the parents to hang out while the kids are actually away doing their laps. It's not like they're walking around with beers while they're doing carnival games. It's just not the way the design is.
Who's doing the walking?
The kids will be doing the walking. I'm glad you worked that out. Thank you.
Yeah.
So is there a carnival or no? Oh, there at that event?
Would you like to
or-
speak? Yeah, thank you.
Oh, okay.
Her name's Kelly.
Kids are walking.
So a couple points of clarification we're looking for is, first off, we haven't made a decision, but if the board were to not want to approve this event, what authority do we have, I guess, is part of that. And then also, the question I have is, what legal ramifications are there for the district should this event happen and something transpire?
Okay. I'll touch on both of those. First, just an introduction, I think this is kind of a tough issue because there's obviously competing interests. So I understand that there are deeply held beliefs on both sides here. On the one hand, you have the desire to support your foundation to not stifle their creativity in coming up with new events. On the other hand, of course, is the liability issues for the district. And unfortunately, alcohol is just one of those things that whenever you have it involved in an event, it does increase the risks. I know that Trustee Nielsen mentioned football also as having the risk for liability. I agree with that completely. I think the consequences that sometimes come out of over alcohol abuse or drinking too much, inebriation, can be very large and can have very large political consequences as well. And so that's why I think it's great that this is coming forward. So I'll touch on your first question first, which was the authority to approve or disapprove of the use of alcohol at the event. And you may recall we were here back in January talking a little bit about foundation oversight issues. And we talked about an education code provision. It's 51521. And it basically says that no party can raise funds in the name of a district or a school without the permission of the governing board or the board's designee. And in this case, the board has delegated that authority in part to the superintendent, and then I believe the superintendent recommends to the board and who has the ultimate say. And so we take the position that that education code provision allows you to approve or deny a request to fundraise in the name of a school in this case. And as part of that, you can place conditions on that approval. And so that's where the authority would come from to say, yes, you may fundraise in the name of Wickland School and have this event, but we are not going to allow alcohol to be consumed or served at the event. So that's the response to your first question. The second question, as far as legal liability is concerned, I think, everybody knows what some of the bad consequences of alcohol consumption can be. We all read the paper and watch the news. Obviously, the desire would be that adults consuming alcohol at the event would be responsible, and then there's no problem. But unfortunately, all it takes is one to have one too many drinks, get into a car, drive away from the event, and injure him or herself or another person, including potentially a student who's present at the event. Short of that terrible consequence, of course, there's the potential for other types of injuries and property damage. And short of that, you could also have inebriated persons engaging in inappropriate conduct. And one of the issues that came to mind for us is, will there be district staff and employees at the event? Will they be partaking in some of the alcohol consumption? And if so, are there any issues that may arise around that? Other issues that could potentially come up would be, obviously, I would hope inadvertent, but if a minor somehow is served by accident or gets their hands on alcohol at the event, I do think that the fencing off idea is a good one, but making sure that that's all policed, who's going to take the charge of that. And then, of course, the last thing is there's permitting and regulations relating to service of alcohol at events. And so another potential legal consequence would be if any of those regulations are not met, someone may be fined or worse for that. And so some people in this room and some members of the board may be thinking that if some terrible consequence like an injury or a car accident were to occur because someone had too much to drink at this event, wouldn't the liability fall onto the foundation since it's their event and they're the ones serving it? And obviously, you're shaking your head, and you're correct to do so, because unfortunately, it's a very complex area of law. These types of lawsuits involve a lot of time and a lot of different parties and a lot of different legal theories, and they're also very fact-driven. So we certainly can't say with any certainty that the district couldn't be found liable as well. And even if we could, the problem is that it's very likely in a situation, a terrible situation like that, or even not a terrible situation, but something bad happens as a result of the alcohol consumption, it's very likely that if the foundation is sued, the district's going to be named as a defendant as well, even if they're not legally responsible. And that means that even if you're ultimately exonerated, you're going to be out of pocket a lot of attorney's fees potentially in defending the lawsuit and getting to that point. So that's another one to think about. And obviously, I don't have to tell any of you that there's political issues as well, aside from the legal ones. Being named in a lawsuit as a defendant when it's related to alcohol consumption, especially if it in some way involves a student, I imagine isn't pleasant. And then some of the other policy-driven issues that you've all touched on already is there's going to be kids at the event. They may be walled off from the drinking, but they still may witness it. They may see adults who are inebriated from partaking in the alcohol consumption. There may be an association between, just in members of the public's eyes as far as alcohol and the district or alcohol in that particular school. So these are all, policy decisions for you. As far as your options, just to close this out briefly, you can prohibit, in our minds, you can prohibit alcohol at events based on these issues and based on the authority that I mentioned. You could also allow it and think about imposing some parameters or conditions on the event, on the use of alcohol. And some of those things might include, indemnity and insurance requirements. I'm sure that's already in place anyway, but just checking to make sure the insurance coverage isn't going to be mooted because there's alcohol at the event. Sometimes there's exclusions related to those types of issues. And then just other things to make sure that the foundation is being safe at the event as far as serving alcohol, just monitoring persons, just make sure they're not getting in cars after drinking too much, limiting the number of drinks per person. There's unlimited amounts of conditions that could be placed. And then the last thing, of course, would be to limit alcohol at events only where students aren't going to be present. That would be another option, which I think was already mentioned. But the thing to keep in mind is that no matter what conditions are imposed, none of them will completely alleviate any risk to the district.
So I have a question. So is it, my assessment is that the risk goes up as alcohol consumption goes up.
I would agree with that.
Okay. So a event then that drinking is not the primary focus, and it's casual, would be somewhat less risky than another event where drinking occurs in more voluminous quantities, correct?
Say that again.
So an
where-
event that has alcohol but is fairly mild, it's not the focus of the event, is less risky than an event where a lot of alcohol is consumed.
Potentially, yes. I think my focus is more on who's policing the voluminousness of the drinking. So if, we're going to say that 2 drinks per person, maybe that's better than everyone's doing a keg stand or something like that. That's probably true. But the point is, as soon as you introduce alcohol, there's the potential.
I understand.
all I'm
But
going
the
for.
question, the question that you were asked is, specific to the differences between an event where alcohol is consumed and an event where children are around but not at the drinking and alcohol is consumed. And 90% of your commentary was general indictments on, general reminding us of the risks of this and that and the other thing. And the one risk that I heard was, okay, you might have a child, even though you're roped off, you might have a child see somebody inebriated and behaving that way. And I acknowledge that that is a risk that is unique to this particular event. But most of those risks that we're looking at are not unique to this type of an event, and they're exacerbated at a event like an auction where kids aren't there and drinking occurs more.
I understand your point now, and if I can just respond briefly. I think that you're right in the sense that the fact that kids are there doesn't necessarily increase the risk or decrease it. The risks of having alcohol at an event are what they are. I think a lot of what I touched on as far as relating to the kids specifically is a little bit more political than legal, but I will say that having the kids there, just keep in mind that the magnitude of a consequence of something bad happening at that event with the kids might be greater than one without. That's kind of the only...
That's fair commentary.
If I could just add, though, I have one point of clarification, because as I read the education code that you specified, it for me, as I'm gonna start using this one, Corey, so you can get really annoyed by it, as a student of the law. As I read the code, I am not a lawyer. As I read the code, I found a great deal of wiggle room that I believe our foundations could raise. The name of the school. That is exactly the language that is used, in the name of the school. Mm-hmm. The foundations, I would posit, if they hired an attorney, would argue it's in the name of the foundation. And where does that change the line? Because I did spend some time researching this and find out that the parent-teacher organizations in the state disagree with your interpretation. Shocking, I know that lawyers would disagree with other lawyers. Mm-hmm. But that's where I would wonder if this is Kite Festival to benefit Wickland School, as opposed to Kite Festival to benefit Wickland Foundation. I know it's not the Kite Festival, what it's called. Isn't that name change, at least for me, that name change is problematic?
I disagree with the other interpretation.
Clearly.
Obviously.
But that's just, I do want to raise a point that I don't think this is, at least from my perspective, I don't think, just like anything else, we could indemnify liability until the cows come home. We could have 100% them liability. We're still going to get sued if something happens. But that would have happened at the auction. That would happen if someone got hit on their bicycle just walking home from the event if zero alcohol were involved. We have liability no matter what we do if our name or our foundation's name is on anything. And while, yes, it may increase the potential for liability, again, what's to prevent me from sitting in the park and having a few beers while I'm watching my kid run around in a circle? The answer is nothing at all, other than maybe the police officer who might want to stop me, but as long as I got a brown bag, I'm okay. So at some point, we have to
Student
recognize
of the law.
Student of the law. I just worry that, again, we're in a position here where we have an opportunity that this doesn't, from my perspective, deviate so far from other options that we have given to our foundations that we should stifle this opportunity before it's had the ability to see what it could be. I agree with exactly what you said before. The best event ever had to happen the first time ever, and allowing for that opportunity with reasonable restrictions, whether that's no more than 2 tickets per person or no more than 3 drinks per person or something to that effect, limiting it but allowing this potential to exist, I think is something we should allow.
I have a question from a liability standpoint. If this were a standalone event, WSF beer garden at the park, off campus, adults only, would that change the liability?
Not necessarily. And again, it's hard to answer that without knowing specific facts in specific contexts. So it really depends, absolutely. And I think that, there's a lot of different considerations. One is that there's more attention to it when there's kids involved, and so maybe someone's more likely to come after the district in that case. That's not necessarily an increase in the actual liability arguments. It's just maybe more likely that somebody's going to come after the district because of it. But other than that, I mean, you do have similar liability concerns no matter where the alcohol is being served and no matter who is in attendance. I think the fact that the kids are present is a little bit more of a policy issue than anything, aside from the certain circumstances that I mentioned earlier. So liability itself isn't necessarily a different thing. Someone could drink too much at an adults only off campus, far from campus fundraiser, get in a car, drive home and hurt someone, and both the foundation and the district could get sued for that just the same as they could in the example that I gave earlier. So from a strict liability standpoint, you've got the same risks in both cases. I think it's still heightened a bit when you have kids present.
Any questions for council?
No.
Okay, thank you. Hang out for just a minute, though.
Thank you very much.
Again, and I just want to clarify that all of your comments regarding being innovative and hey, I agree 100%. I just have concern, and part of it's because I've seen the worst of the worst and how these have a tendency of getting out of control. And I also have concern. She mentioned political and kind of brushed over it, but how does it look for the district when parents are there that don't approve, that are there coming to an event that they think is kid-friendly for their kids, and then there's adults that are there drinking? I think that's politically, I think it's a bad image for us to.
I have a question. The crab feeds that have already been approved as fundraiser events, are those intended to be adults only?
Those high school events or
athletic boosters. As the treasurer,
and those have alcohol involved?
I would say yes.
I didn't know that. Yeah. Where is it being held?
It's off-site.
Did staff know that? Was staff aware there's alcohol at those events?
Let's refresh my memory as the first.
No, hey, we're not going to have a conversation with the audience. Was staff aware that there's alcohol at these events?
The crab feeds?
Yes.
The last crab feed conversation that I was aware of, so I have not checked the fundraisers, and I'd have to talk to Kush about that, is that there was one brought forward, and then it kind of didn't go forward. So I can't answer the question about the alcohol. I do not know that there was a crab feed with alcohol plans, but that's because I'm not overseeing it.
So maybe we need to have a
now
box on our fundraiser application, however the school site notifies the district.
Well, and now we've loosened the restriction, and we're finding out about this way. So I think that,
Well, I don't think this had anything to do with the loosened restriction, because I believe the crab feed option happened well before the local the changes, at least the options that were being explored were before we changed what that policy was. But I do agree that there should be clarification of it, but I've also have attended a few crab feeds, and it's not much different than the barbecue. It's not the focus, but it's involved. I mean, it is part of most typical crab feeds that I've ever been to, so.
And I don't think the focus of this event is going to be on the drinking. I heard the way it was described. My hesitation is that the focus is on the kids. At a crab feed, the focus is on the crab feed. It's not, this is not an event designed for students. There's liability in everything we do. I agree
Absolutely.
with you.
But my concern also is not just political, not just liability, but also political liability and potential. But I just would hate to see something happen and the question be raised, why didn't you do something about that? How could you have not known that something like this was going to happen? That's my concern.
Can I posit, though, that each one of the five of us is responsible for our own political liability? I mean, in the end, if I make a decision that is politically unpopular within this constituency, I'm held accountable.
I'm worried about the negative consequences for the district.
Sure. And that's, and I
He
get
means
that
the
part of it.
political
There's
consequences to the
two,
district.
There's, like I say, there's the negative ramifications that might have on the district. I can see that, but realistically speaking, I think that in the end that falls on us, on you and I and the five of us up here.
Okay. Did you have any comments, Trustee Pombo?
I'm torn on this because I can see all different sides of this issue. I'm not really comfortable with the beer garden concept being inside of everything else going on. I guess I erroneously understood that it was going to be separate over here someplace and over there somewhere was going to be the carnival and the walkathon and stuff, and that they were going to be.
But I think that is, isn't it? Could we have clarification on that?
Corey needs to come up to the podium.
Okay, the theoretical design is that the baseball diamond in the corner will have the beer garden, which gives you a fence on two sides, and we could fence that off on the other sides. A true fence and then a fake fence. And that's in the baseball diamond for Wickland Park. The kids themselves will be walking around the entirety of the park way on the outside, so they'll be doing the fire lane, they'll be doing the sidewalks. That's their lap. It's roughly 0.75, so it's not. And then all the carnival games are actually in the major field that's on the other side of the gazebo. So it is separated as far as like not in the middle of all the stuff, but it's in the middle as far as they are walking a giant square, and it is in a quadrant of the square.
You're around the beer garden, right?
Sort of. I mean, but there's a fence there as well as a bunch of shrubbery. If you've been to the baseball diamond at Wickland Park lately, you'll know that that corner that I'm talking about has a ton of shrubbery. There's probably 15 feet between the sidewalk and the fence. I mean, it's pretty. I mean, you're not getting in from the backside, certainly.
And it may be splitting hairs, but I would be more comfortable if it were completely separate and the kids were not walking around the area where this was going on. And maybe it's just, silly, that distinction, but
If it's a distinction for you, it's not silly.
thank you.
We'll hear public comment. James Lamb.
Thanks for taking public comment, board, president, members. I'm listening to everything going on, and I'm getting kind of dragged back and forth because I hear good points on everybody's side. I want to speak to two issues. One is I was involved in the alcohol industry for a long time. I was a bar manager, bartender, sommelier. I know the ABC laws inside and out. The organization who hosts the event, the alcohol, have to have an ABC license. They have to meet certain criteria that the state of California defines exactly what has to happen to separate children from adults. That's the law. What you're talking about is something in addition to the law. You want to get some extra protection. But they already have very specific things they have to do. It's not going to be the people that are teenagers are going to be serving drinks to kids. Vino 100 will lose their alcohol license. That's their business. They can't afford to be having drinks going to kids or having people go off-site inebriated. It's not a casual thing for them. It's real. They lose their alcohol license, they're out of business. That's the first point I want to make. Second point, and somebody already kind of alluded to it, there's absolutely no difference from a liability perspective between this event and the crab feed or the boosters event or something else. The liability to the district is identical. If somebody goes out and it's an accident, whether it's an adult or a kid, it's the same. Yeah, the politics, I get that. But the liability, it's identical. And the last point is more broad and about this topic. I have concerns about the scalability of this board using their time and resources to go into fine detail about events that other adults that were put into their position by members of this community and entrusted to run those 501c3s that are independent organizations that you are saying that your judgment is more important than theirs. I get the liability piece, so you're tied together in some way. I get that, but I'm afraid of this idea that right now we have 4 elementary schools. We have 5 elementary schools. We have Lammersville and the other schools, and we have the high school. But at some point, we're going to have 11 elementary schools. We're probably going to have 16 or so different organizations, and it's not going to be pragmatic for you guys to be spending your time, going into fine details on each of these little events. I think what Mr. Clement said earlier on was actually key, that you guys need to develop a policy that you can apply to all situations so that you don't have to get into the minutia. Because you actually create more liability for yourself if you take absolute control of that. If you guys are the ones that are actually making the decision, then you will be the ones who actually have the liability. Whereas if you have a broad policy and it's their specific decision making that caused the problem, they're going to have more of the liability. So the accountability is going to be going to the person who's made the most decisions. And legal counsel could probably say that's true or not true, and I certainly welcome that opinion. But the more specific you are, the more ownership you have of it. The more general you are, and leaving that decision to somebody else, because that's the point, the decider, who's deciding to do this. And right now we've got, 30 volunteer board members. These guys don't get paid. We're going to have 60. Those are people out there in the community volunteering their time, putting their creative energy into these projects, and to have another board sitting over them. So I'd rather see you guys move towards this idea of a policy directive and not where you are, I don't like this word, but it's maybe apropos, is micromanage those events for them. Let them figure that stuff out on their own, subject to a clear policy, a consistent policy. You can't say, well, we're going to allow the crab feed, but we're not going to allow this. Well, there's going to be kids at the crab feed.
Okay.
They're going to see people drink. Thank you.
Well, I agree with some of your comments. This board has a responsibility of oversight of the foundations. That's been given to us. I'm a representative at the state level, and every board member is going through the same issues with their foundations. When a foundation comes up missing money, the question comes to the school board, why did you let this happen? So we have a responsibility. I don't think that we're micromanaging. In fact, we just loosened the policy at our very last meeting. So we are still fairly small, we are still growing, and I think that some of these policies we're setting, we're doing it for process, and that's kind of been our theme this whole year, is establishing process. So to my knowledge, this is the first event of this kind. Now, I understand there may be other events that I wasn't aware of, which that's a whole separate issue that will be dealt with after this meeting, I assure you. But that's why it's here tonight to have this discussion, because to my knowledge, we hadn't had anything like this. Stephanie Olson.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Balzerini and Mr. Nielsen. I had emailed the board earlier with some of my concerns, and they responded to give me a heads up. Initially, when I saw this item on the agenda, I was a little nervous and upset because we just had that new policy where I was in complete agreement with, where it was streamlined through the site administrators and then the superintendent, and I thought that was a great way to go for efficiency and just as far as trusting these people to do their jobs. And you clarified that and expressed your concerns, which that we've discussed a lot tonight. Not me, but you. And I think on the liability issue, I think anything we do as a foundation, we're going to incur some sort of liability to you guys. Like at our carnival at Cuesta, we have bounce houses. And if you talk to any ER doctor, my daughter just broke her arm getting on a trampoline, that's a liability. I know it's not as severe as alcohol, but we also do a trunk or treat, and we take safety precautions, but there's liability there. There's moving vehicles and people, potential people to leave their cars too soon and back up, which we take very good precautions not to let that happen. But so I think on a liability argument, it's kind of like, in favor of the foundations, like doing the alcohol thing at the events. And I get that with the children present that, that's a concern. I actually am more, in my personal opinion, in line with you, Mr. Balzerini, and the Cuesta culture is kind of that way. But I don't like to take my personal opinion and enforce it upon the community, because the Wickland school culture and demographics is definitely different than Cuesta's makeup. And I think, if you talk to the parents of a foundation group that support that foundation, they give their input to their board members, and they create those events and fundraisers that appeal to their parents or their supporters. So I would hate to see some like definitive policy saying you can never do this or that. I do think that guidelines would be appropriate, and when I think of oversight, that's kind of what I think of, is not specific. You can't do this ever. You can't do that, because I think, like Mr. Clement said, it takes away from innovation. But I do think that if you give guidelines to the foundations, that that is a fair way to handle things, and let them innovate. And you won't have to worry about Cuesta because our parents are pretty clear. They don't like the alcohol mixture. But our parents are so different from Wickland parents. I would hate for our fundraising way to have to be enforced on them, because I think it would be unfair to their goals, which they just want to raise money for their enrichment activities too. So that's kind of all I wanted to say. I'm glad to know that I was totally wrong, and that you guys aren't jumping back in to oversee and micromanage. So appreciate it. Thank you.
I appreciate your comments, and just about every single one of those issues that you described through the Facility Use Committee, we've gone back to revisit. The jumpy houses, we've taken a look at that, and that puts you in a higher tier, and there's additional insurance requirements. The trunk or treat, we set a policy that no vehicle movement in the parking lots during those times. And those are the kinds of things that I believe that this board is tasked with, is looking at these new innovative ideas and trying to address some of the safety concerns and make sure that we're doing the best that we can for the district, the best that we can for our students, and while still allowing these events to happen. And I mean, my mind's not made up. I think that that's one thing, well, every single one of us up here brings to this board, is that through intelligent conversation and through these discussions, I've seen board, each of us kind of sway our position, and I just want to make sure that we're doing it right.
And I would just like to clarify that we're not making a decision today. This is a discussion item, and part of how you get to guidelines and policies and those things is discussing it and hashing out what do we want for our guidelines, and what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. And that's what the whole idea behind having a discussion item is to come up with a solution.
I wanted to, lest my commentary be misunderstood, I wanted to say that I wanted to make it clear that while technically the foundations or school support organizations are separate legal entities, and the district actually has no control over them, functionally we do have control, because we can say you don't have access to our site administrators, you can't talk to the principal, you can't use any of our facilities, and you can't use our name. But other than that, you could do whatever you want, right? And I believe that we have the responsibility. As a group of 5 people, we have the responsibility to draw the guidelines. And if 3 of us feel strongly about where those guidelines are, and, then that makes a quorum. And I can say that, I am the kind, I'm the kind of person that if we decide as a group of 5 people that this is the way we're going to move forward, then that's the way we're moving forward. And, and there will be, there's not going to be sniping and, all this. So I wanted to be clear that we do have the, we may not have the legal right, but we have the functional right, and we have the responsibility to draw those guidelines.
I'll disagree. We 100% have the legal right. There's just no, in my mind, I get that a foundation may be able to raise the argument, but the education code is very clear. If you put the name Wickland on something, Wickland School on something, and solicit funds for that purpose, we have every bit of a right not to micromanage.
But they can, my point is they can change their name to, they can change their name.
There's a whole other issue there.
And the whole 9 yards. But I think we agree on the function, right? On the result.
Lynette Hapgood.
Good evening, board. I think we've been here a few times, right? So normally I address you by your titles. Tonight I just want to look at you all as trustees because I think it's very telling. So I know we're talking about board oversight, right? We're talking about a lot of things. We started out with morale. The teachers got up and displayed a lot of courage, and I appreciate that. Now your foundation members are standing up and displaying that same amount of courage. You're trustees, you were elected. We asked you to look at us, know our intentions, support us, and do the right thing. We're talking about having alcohol at events, right? We have alcohol in our homes if we choose to. My kids are in my house every day, every night. It's my responsibility to police them. And I understand police, worst of the worst, fire, worst of the worst, right? These things don't necessarily happen at a walkathon at Wickland Park, right? You're gonna see a lot more damage from parents to their children because it's proximity-based. If I'm out in public and you tell me I can only have 3 drinks and I have a wristband where you're gonna punch every time I get one and I'm gonna be there for 5 hours, guess what I'm gonna do, folks? I'm gonna have 3 drinks. I'm gonna make sure I'm sober enough to drive that kid home, or because we live near, we're walking. That's my liability, okay? Not politics. Those are my children, that's my responsibility, that's my liability, right? You don't accept that, those are my kids. So every time we have a music in the park, every time we have any kind of outdoor event, we come there knowing there will be alcohol because guess what? We get to bring a cooler full of it. I decide how many beers go in the cooler, I decide where my kids go, what they watch me do, and how inebriated I get. That's a decision I make as a parent. My problem with the discussion we're having right now is you guys are talking about policing us, and I feel like that is lacking courage. It's lacking courage on your part. You're looking at all the things that I could do wrong to make a very bad day for you, right? And your insurance and your lawyer. And I'm telling you that whatever bad thing I do that day that causes that accident with my child in it is way worse for me than it's ever gonna be for any of you because I have to live with that, okay? And you trust that, right? Because you feel that and you know what I'm saying is true. There is no more honest thing that we can say than that. You trust us as parents, we trust you with our kids, we trust you with our tax dollars. Every single teacher in here I would give my child, and I do, because some of you have had my kids. I extend that trust to those teachers. I extend that trust to you as a board, and I'm asking you to do the same to us as parents. All we are trying to do is raise more money to give back to you, right? And our teachers for our students' benefit. So you start putting these policies and these rules in there, and you say, we're not willing to accept the risk. What risk are you really accepting that we haven't already considered before we brought these ideas forth, before we as parents sat down, voted on them, and said we will support it, and we will give you 100% of the money? We all have jobs, right? I put in 80 hours a week sometimes. I take time out from my life to help Wickland School Foundation raise money. My kids go to Bethany. What does that tell you?
Any other board comments?
I will just add a couple of things, at least from my perspective, and it kind of, maybe not as passionately or as aggressively as Ms. Hapgood's comments, or Mrs. I apologize, Hapgood's comments. There is an amount of personal responsibility in all of our fundraisers. I mean, we allow fundraisers at Buffalo Wild Wings, and not for naught, alcohol is a big part of that fundraiser. I get the proximity of children to alcohol and the concern or the perspective that that raises, but in the end, these are grown-ups making grown-up decisions, and I believe we should allow or trust them to do their jobs and fulfill their roles properly until they show they can't. And that's how I believe, as trustees, as long as we set up reasonable guidelines that make some measured sense, we should allow them to meet that. And my perspective, my personal opinion is an absolute is not a reasonable guideline.
Okay, so as a matter of procedure, I think we're going to have to bring this specific event as an action item to get the board's decision on whether or not we support it. Unless anyone can think of anything else. That's the only way we're going to know if the
We have to vote on it tonight.
we're going to have to we have to bring it back as an action item so we can vote on it.
Tonight.
Not tonight. It needs to come back. It's not agendized that way.
I thought you said the word tonight, and you said that's what we're gonna have to do. I'm like, I don't think we can.
No.
You didn't say tonight.
Not tonight. It's going to have to come back as an agendized item. Thank you very much for the presentation. Appreciate all the input. And so next meeting, we'll bring that back as an action item. And we'll need detailed information from the foundation about what specifically, everything's going to go along with the event. Next item, calendar. Monday, September 7th, district holiday. Thursday, September 10th is the next facility use committee meeting. And September. And September 16th is the next regular governing board meeting.
I move we adjourn to closed session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And for closed session, we'll be discussing public employee discipline dismissal release complaint, conference with labor negotiators, Government Code Section 54956.9, conference with legal counsel for anticipated litigation, exposure to litigation, and conference with real property negotiators.